The story begins with a certain girl making full use of her unique skill called the internet, and doing whatever she wants. Rona, the main character, was being scolded for manifesting a weak class skill as a SSS rank while all her brothers were manifesting skills of B rank or higher. Her brother was so angry that he even told her he was ashamed of her to be a part of their family. He then yelled at her, telling her that she had been banished and would never again bear the name Gugrekas. They kicked her out and told her to do her best on her own. She had never imagined being driven out just as she was, with nothing but the clothes on her back. The reason she wasn't killed in that situation was probably to prevent a criminal record from being attached to his status. She looked at her stats and noticed that her last name was changed to her mother's maiden name. She was officially expelled from the Gugrekas family. She was only at level 1 and didn't even have any equipment. At this rate, she would be killed by weak monsters in no time. However, a smile appeared on her face and she was relieved that she could finally go outside. She started to look around excitedly until she heard something coming from a tree. Thankfully, it was just a slime. She heard that the April slimes in this forest could drop from tree branches onto her face and suffocate her, so he tried to kill her. She believed that she could handle a single slime with her current self. She had been studying and training magic in the castle all this time, so she should be able to use basic magic. She tried to make small ice, but it wasn't a small ice, it was a tiny ice. Rona was flabbergasted by how weak she was. In this case, she had no choice but to use the internet, the newly manifested SSS rank unique skill. She activated and used it on the slime. However, there was no change in the first seconds. And then the slime exploded. She gained 4 experience points from the slime and leveled up. She was happy and proud of her skill but still felt empty inside. She wondered why such an incomprehensible skill manifests in all things. The magic stone dropped by the evil slime was worth 10 silver coins, however she could only afford to buy bread crust. She then realized that if things continued like this, it would be bad to starve and wander around. She was hungry and might die but didn't know what to do. She opened the keyboard but didn't even know those characters. But strangely, she understood their meaning. She wondered if she should touch the letters and create words like a password. She decided to give it a try and tried to type internet. With lots of struggle, after 10 minutes she was able to write it. It seemed like a lot of text appeared and there was a list of book titles. She was a little bit confused as to what to do. She wondered if the internet was like a skill that resembled a library. Since it was an information-based skill, it meant that nothing happened even if she activated it. She thought while she originally wanted combat-related skills to protect herself, if she was going on a journey, information was more important than anything else. She thought maybe that skill wasn't as bad as she had thought. She started to research the information she wanted to know. First, she wanted to search the map of the Ypres forest. She thought nothing could begin without getting out of that forest. She thought maps were quite valuable and could not be found easily, but it was worth a try. 5 minutes later, she found the map and thought it was something on the level of national secrets, to have such detailed information written there. She thought it was not something an ordinary person should be looking at. Then she was okay with just taking a look and she wanted to satisfy her hunger quickly in town. She saw some kind of mark on the map. When she clicked on it, she found out that there were 500 silvers nearby. At first, she couldn't believe this, but when she touched the silver, she seemed very happy. After some thinking, she started to feel a little scared of the internet. She wondered how it knew all those things. Then she found out that it not only had the map of Ypres forest, but also all over the world. She thought there was no way a skill like that was lower than G rank, and it must be an incredibly powerful skill. A skill that touched the wisdom of the gods. Rona thought if she could master the internet, she might have lived freely just like the protagonist of the story whom she loved, her mom. Once, her mom apologized to her because of the constraints of the aristocracy. She had been trapped in the mansion. However, her mother said she was sure that someday Rona would be free under the vast sky, and she hoped Rona would see many beautiful landscapes, meet wonderful people in abundance, and spend her days with laughter. Rona thought if she had that skill, she might have been able to live freely like the protagonist of the story she once admired. She convinced herself that it was a good thing to be banished before she understood how to use the internet. She thought if she had known at the time, she would have been imprisoned by the Gugrekas family and used as a tool for information gathering. Then she got to work on searching and investigating more things. Rona continued walking down the road, oblivious to the pigs following her. She thought that it was impressive to know even the locations of monster spawns and trap placements. She now could open multiple windows of the internet, and also she had become able to search the internet using a private mode that others could not see. She was starting to get a little more familiar with the internet. According to the internet, there should be a fork in the road around there, and she found it and thought what was written on the internet was all of it was accurate information. She thought only 500 silver. Wouldn't be able to afford a place to stay. Then she found a hidden passage, and she thought at the end of the hidden passage, there must have been a tremendous amount of loose change. Then she wondered if the SSS rank was truly above the A rank. She searched it and found the fact that there were 3 ranks above A rank, and it was confusing for her to understand the ranks. Then she set out to find the hidden passage. When she arrived at the hidden passage's location, there was nothing there but trees. When she touched one of the trees, the hidden passage appeared, and she could not believe that the World Tree Wand was lying around near her parents' house. What was written on the internet was like the words of gods for her. The place felt like a sacred place, and it was as if all the impurities in her body were being drawn away. It didn't seem like the wand would just be lying around like loose change. Rona started to do some research about it, and she found the acquisition method of the Wand of the World Tree. The keywords were time, halt, the world is beautiful. For now, she decided to say the keywords, and after she said those words, then the World Tree appeared, which was called Yggdrasil. She congratulated Rona and told her that she had successfully overcome the trials of the 12 stars. She told Rona that she understood even without her saying anything. The words just could only be spoken by those who have overcome the trials and possessed a righteous heart. She told Rona that through many encounters and farewells, she had experienced a lot to get there precisely because it was her. She said she could entrust that child to Rona with peace of mind. Then she gave Rona a wand and told her that she entrusted that world to her. Yggdrasil left, and Rona was trying to understand what she meant by entrusting the world to her. She felt like she had been handed some absurd bomb or something. Then she tried to check the performance of that staff. She ended up receiving a staff that was way more incredible than she had thought, like 100 times over. It was a bit late to ask, but she wondered what exactly that staff was. Then she found that when a crisis has eventually befallen the world, the savior would take that staff in hand as written in the description by the fairy tribe's divine staff. It was famously known in the end as the Pharynx Breaker. It was getting darker, and Rona thought so maybe she would camp out there. According to the internet, it seemed like no monsters appeared around there. She had plenty of MP, so she didn't have to worry about using up MP. She wanted to make a small flame. As she continued to defeat groups of evil slimes, groups of poison flowers, green goblins, and the Goblin King, her skill was increasing. Suddenly, we were in Rona's father's room. Rona's brother burst into the room, and the father asked him what happened to Rona and asked him if he properly abandoned her. Her brother asked who cared about someone like that and told his father that the Great Spirit Vein in the forbidden area of the Ypres Forest had disappeared. Then the father stood up and said the Great Spirit Vein in Ypres Forest was said to be the world's largest source of mana. The father asked his son if the Great Spirit Vein had disappeared. He approved it, and he said the reports had already been filed. They thought mana was essential for humans to live, and their Gugreka's family had prospered by monopolizing the mana from the Spirit Vein. The father said they had also taken on a large amount of debt, anticipating future profits from the Spirit Vein. Moreover, without mana, the plan they had been advancing would also cease. He was thinking if this got to the king's ears, they would be held responsible for the disappearance of the Spirit Vein. Moreover, he said, if an investigation came from the royal palace, they might have discovered that Ron's father's side had been embezzling the mana from the Spirit Vein. Rona's brother asked if they could hide its disappearance. It was impossible for his father, and he wondered why the Spirit Vein, which had been maintained for thousands of years, would suddenly disappear. The brother said they were investigating that right now, but it seemed likely to be a man-made disaster. He reported that right after the disappearance of the Great Spirit Vein, a massive magical reaction was detected from the Ypres Forest. The amount of MP estimated from the amount of mana was said to exceed 10,000. The father said that was impossible, and added the maximum MP for a human was supposed to be 999. He thought if there was a being capable of using such magic, then it was said in ancient times there existed a demon king. Meanwhile, Rona had killed many different groups of monsters and increased her X points, and her level had risen considerably. She was thinking what to do next, and the staff's performance was too high. She couldn't control the magic. If someone saw her in a place like this, she thought she would be burned by the people. She thought she had to get away from this place as soon as possible. All she wanted was to live freely and peacefully. It was the next day, and Rona had the talent to regain her spirits after a night's rest. It seemed like Rona was almost at the town, but before that, she found the Maboro leaf, which was used as an ingredient in high-ranking medicines, and also as an event item in the subquest. Rona was seeing hallucinations of lots of delicious food. She picked lots and lots of Maboro leaf, and then she decided to go to town quickly and eat something. But before that, there was a goblin-made pitfall there. There were 3 level 4 brown goblins hiding in the nearby bushes. She knew that they were probably planning to ambush anyone who fell into the pit, but she had already studied all of this on the internet, so it didn't concern her. She used her Wand of the World Tree and said, Terra Drain. After that, she thought monsters became incapacitated for a while when their MP dropped to 0 according to the internet information. Then she remembered the brown goblin's weakness was wind attribute, and she created a small wind. She defeated a group of brown goblins, and she was happy that she could now properly use magic. But she was still being overwhelmed by the wand's excessive power. It was amazing that even the method to obtain such a powerful staff written on the internet was truly amazing. Moreover, even though no one knew about things like skill acquisition conditions or monsters' weaknesses, everything was written on the internet. In Rona's world, innate skills were highly valued because no one knew how to acquire skills in the first place, and the basic understanding was that if you trained hard enough, you would eventually acquire skills around G to E rank. Rona thought if the methods for acquiring skills were known, it would be treated as a state secret. Yet, she said, the internet listed all the conditions for acquiring skills, even the conditions for acquiring skills. Rona was almost at the exit of the forest, but before that, she encountered the boss, or in another name, the forest guardian animal who blocked the exit when one tried to cross Ipru Forest. Although its behavior pattern was simple, its high attack, defense, and speed made it an impossible opponent in the early stages. Furthermore, its charge attack was very powerful, capable of destroying trees and rocks. And it was the final task for Rona. She was prepared thanks to researching on the internet. After all, the internet only had the correct information she thought. Its weaknesses were fire and ice attributes, so she thought fire seemed dangerous as it could burn the woods. Then she preferred to use small ice. However, as expected, a level 50 monster wouldn't be defeated with just a simple spell. Rona realized she spread her precious food because she could only see her Mayboro leaf potion ingredients. She found it unforgivable she did all she could, and then the 5th level boss monster was on the ground and she was so happy to defeat it just as planned. She proudly recited information she found on the internet. Rona wondered why someone would bother to research and write such detailed stuff, and also wondered if gods had a lot of free time. In any case, all that was left was to keep attacking until it fell. Mr. Guardian was going to become food. The guardian of the Ipru Forest was like a symbol of terror around there. Even the Gugrekas family with many high-ranked skill holders couldn't handle the guardian. Somehow she won so easily that it was kind of anticlimactic. In fact, could it be that she would have won just by attacking twice normally? Come to think of it, her magic attack was over 3,600 now. She wondered if that meant she had over 7 times the magical power of the kingdom's strongest class of wizards. She was trying to calculate how strong she had become. Moreover, the effect of the World Tree Wand doubled the magic power at the cost of triple MP consumption. The skill Magic Mastery 3 increased the magic power by 1.3 times. Due to a level difference of 32, the skill Game Hunter Y increased damage by 1.32 times. Additionally, hitting the Guardian's weak point doubled the damage, and by combining all of those, it seemed she had become quite powerful. Then Rona stopped thinking about it and decided to collect the dropped items. While she was collecting the dropped items, she found some processed items appeared. She found armor footwear, which was also called rush boots. She wondered how it worked and why it was processed. Her shoes were worn out from walking in the forest, so she would gratefully exchange them. She thought getting good equipment lifted her spirits. Those boar rush boots had an equipment skill called Boar Rush. As Rona read it on the internet, it was written that it doubled the movement speed. It seemed like the downside was that she could not stop until she deactivated it, but that was not a problem for her. Above all, the internet was saying it was convenient, so it must have been a really useful skill. She wanted to try it out since she had it. She wore it, and magic words came out of Rona's mouth. Boar Rush. As soon as she said that, the boots made her run so fast that she thought it was just going to be double speed and let her guard down. After leveling up and changing equipment, her speed stat jumped from 6 to 346, and that got doubled. She was about to crash, but she canceled the skill. At the end of the chapter, she saw a town, and while she was admiring the town, someone pushed her, and she lifted her head to look at him. The soldiers who heard the sound wondered what was happening in the Ipru Forest, but it wasn't something they could do anything about, so they didn't worry. The other one wished he was an adventurer so he could go check out, but then realized what he said and apologized to Rabo. He told him to now worry and informed him that he was going to quit his job as a gatekeeper. His friend wondered the reason. Rabo chose this job because it allowed him to keep looking at the outside world he loved so much. But hearing stories of travels from people who came to town had become hard for him, and he can't even look at the outside world anymore. The wind blowing from the horizon no longer strips his spirit of adventure, but only makes his old wounds throb. He was embarrassed to say that he was born to be an adventurer, but his knees were the problem. Even the former court physician couldn't cure them. So now, no matter what, he can't return to being an adventurer. Mr. Wall wanted to say something, but he changed the subject and told him to go take a break first. When he left, Rabo thought about the fact that he would never be able to use his B-rank skill again. He should let go of his lingering attachment. He wasn't at the age to be called Rabo anymore, and from now on he decided to have a family and a life unrelated to being an adventurer. In the middle of thinking about all those depressive thoughts, suddenly Rona fell to the ground. He was speechless because of the shock at first, but then asked her if she was okay. He then asked if she came from Ipru Forest. When she confirmed, he immediately wanted to make sure she was okay. Rona was puzzled as to why he was acting like that. Rabo explained that since yesterday there had been a natural disaster happening in that forest and everyone in the town was talking about this. Rona got freaked out and tried to defend herself by saying she didn't do anything and she was innocent. However, Rabo didn't understand why she was saying all those things, so she tried to act like she was just a scared little girl. He wondered if she was okay. She seemed like a sheltered young lady experiencing town for the first time. He asked if she had anything to identify herself, but Rona didn't have an identity card. She was worried that he wouldn't let her into the town, but he explained that the procedure to enter the town might be a bit more complicated, but now impossible. He asked her to place her hand on a stone tablet to check for any criminal records as part of the procedure. She did what he asked, and Rabo was shocked when he saw that she was level 22. To explain his surprise, he stated that her level was impressive for her age. That was like the level of a veteran adventurer. He was even more surprised to see her MP in magic. He questioned her real identity and wondered if she was some kind of demon lord or something. Rona tried to convince her that it was just a malfunction of the tablet and she was just a normal traveler like anyone else. Even though he didn't seem like he bought that, he went along with her. He knew that with stats like that one wouldn't be a human. Rona tried so hard not to cry after that statement. Since there was no issue with her criminal record, once she paid the tax of 200 sil, she was free to go. He asked if she was still planning to travel. He suggested she consider joining the Adventurers Guild. She always thought it was something that people with big muscles would do, but that was a bit of an exaggerated stereotype. He explained that lately there had been an increase in adventurers and there were many girls like her. At least getting an adventurer's card would serve as an ID, so registering with the guild wouldn't hurt. He also mentioned that if she was ever short on money, she could also get job referrals, and paying taxes would be easier. The most troublesome thing about traveling was dealing with taxes. If she was part of the Adventurers Guild, they automatically pay a portion of your earnings as taxes, and she don't need to look up the tax system of each town. That alone made it worth joining. Rona indeed hasn't thought about the taxes. She decided that her first job would be visiting the Adventurers Guild. Rabo envied her for becoming an adventurer and having exciting experiences. Rona did notice that he knew a lot about adventurers. He explained that he used to be an adventurer, but he took an arrow to the knee. Rona checked something on her stats. He wondered what was wrong as she didn't say anything back to him, but she told him to excuse her for a moment and use her small healing ability to heal him. A light appeared from the sky, but Rabo didn't feel anything. Rona smiled and wished him that his knee would get better. Now it was time for her to head into the town. He opened the gate and welcomed her. Rona thanked him and walked away while mumbling a song. Reinhardt realized that this might be the last time he saw off adventurers. Mr. Wall came and told him to take a break. He mentioned to Wall that the status appraisal stone tablet was malfunctioning. Wall started to check the tablet while Reinhardt was thinking about his knee. He didn't want to have those thoughts but couldn't help himself. Suddenly he noticed something. Wall was done checking the tablet, but the tablet stone wasn't broken. Reinhardt dropped his weapon and started to walk like his knees were fine. His leg was moving without any pain. He took out his helmet and looked at the bright sky. He had forgotten how vast the world was, and how pleasant the wind felt. Now he could go anywhere in the world he sees, and even beyond the horizon. He could not hold his tears any longer and started to cry. Wall thought he was having a hard time walking, but it wasn't that. He was just pleased that he could walk again. Wall asked what happened, and he said that a mysterious girl who knew his name cast a healing spell on him. Wall couldn't believe what he heard, as even the former court physician couldn't heal that wound. Reinhardt looked at him with a smiley face and wondered if he could become an adventurer again. His friend Wall was so happy that he could become one again. He believed that this was God's work. Reinhardt also thought it might have been divine intervention. He thanked her again and again in his mind. Meanwhile, Rona was just glad that she didn't reveal her true power. She just used healing magic on the spur of the moment, but she never expected it to be so divine. She used the internet to search for his issues, which was pretty scary. However, she didn't know if he was healed, but it was good to gather information in advance. Now it was time to find what she had been looking for. She was going to find the famous Ipru pie. In the next scene, the people in the town were freaking out because of the disaster in the Ipru forest. Rona didn't care at all because she was starving. She ignored everything and walked through the streets while her tummy was growling. She continued walking at the sweet smell wafting through the air. The people seemed to notice her. She hadn't eaten properly since she left home, so she was just famished. While wondering if there was anything to eat, she was the famous Ipru pie. Her eyes started shining. She asked for one Ipru pie. The seller seemed surprised by how calm she was considering the town's situation. She said that she was just getting used to and focused on her first ever food purchase. When she bit into the pie crust, hot, juicy fruit was filling in her mouth. She almost burned her mouth on the steaming hot pie, not used to its temperature. The texture of the pie was amazing, and the aroma of the butter and cinnamon tickled her nostrils. She was so happy to be able to fill her tummy. Until now, everything served in Gugreka's house was more about appearance than taste, just delicacies. She was happy to finally be able to eat delicious food. The taste made her reflect and mutter to herself. She didn't regret buying that even though it left her with only 100 sills. However, she knew that her situation was bad. She wondered if there was a good way to make money, so she checked the internet. After surfing on the internet, she found an online casino and won a luxury prize in a lottery. She couldn't believe she was making money just by touching a screen. She noticed that people were talking about her, so she decided to be more careful and not lose track of time looking at the internet. First things first, she needed to turn as much of her material into cash as possible to pay for lodging, but then remembered that she should register as an adventurer. She arrived at the Adventurers Guild and had absolutely no idea what was going on. There was a panic in the Adventurers Guild and people were freaking out about the amount of monsters that disappeared. Rona was hesitating. It was hard for her to enter, but for a traveler to make money, becoming an adventurer was the only way. She decided to not catch anyone's attention and started walking. However, while she was walking, some adventurers noticed her wand and claimed that she was a noble kid trying to become an adventurer. They got excited about the possibility of her having money. They cut her way and told her that they couldn't let her pass. However, before he even finished his sentence, Rona knocked them all down. People were looking at her with shock. However, she didn't seem to understand what she just did. She asked if they were okay. The adventurers seemed pretty intimidated by her and tried to show her the way to the reception. She thanked them without knowing that they were jerks and continued on her way. She told the receptionist woman that she wanted to exchange some materials for money. She showed everything in her bag and then stated that she wanted to register as an adventurer. The receptionist was surprised that she hadn't done it yet because gathering all those materials without even being an adventurer seemed pretty abnormal. Rona smiled and tried to explain that she was just lucky to find a lot of magic stones lying around. The receptionist woman then explained to her that she needed to take an easy test to register. She asked for her name, and when she heard that this little girl was Rona Hermit, she froze. At the Adventurers Guild training ground, a woman who was the guildmaster came, and the man who saw her seemed pretty scared. He wondered why she was there because she was supposed to be investigating the natural disasters now. She stated that she was going to personally act as the examiner for this test. The man tried to object to her as the tests conducted by Elmina always resulted in no passers and many injuries. However, when Elmina asked if he had a problem with that, he couldn't say a thing to her. Elmina asked if a girl named Rona Hermit was coming, and the man confirmed her. She seemed pretty excited to turn Rona Hermit into ashes as the witch of the annihilation of Elmina Manafire. In the next scene, a crystal sphere orders Elmina to torture and fail Rona Hermit when she comes for the exam. She confidently accepted and promised to make her suffer so much that she would never think of being an adventurer again. She didn't know those details, but she knew there was a girl named Rona, and this examinee, Rona Hermit, said to be a weakling with low-rank skills. She thought about the possibility of her banished from her home because her skills were too low-ranked. In this world, power was everything, and this is why no one can oppose the powerful Gugrekas family, and powerless girls were easily expelled from their homes. On the other hand, if you had power, you could obtain everything. When Elmina was a child, she was in D rank, and her parents always told her to manifest an A rank to be the strongest. When she grew up a little, she achieved an A rank and was the strongest person in her class. She was then appointed as the Gugrekas family's personal magician. The world was easy for her. She had been on the elite path since birth because she had an A rank skill. However, she was not planning to stay as some rural guildmaster. Her goal was to ingratiate herself with the Gugrekas family and rise to become a great noble. She told one of the workers to bring the examinees quickly. There were so many of them. Lately, the idea of striking it rich with dungeon exploration seemed to be popular, so youngsters like them have been influenced by that. She checked their manas with Mana Search, and they were all pretty weak. Just as she thought, none of them were elite. She didn't know which one was Rona's hermit, but it seemed there was no one with high-rank skills there. While thinking about failing them all, she noticed the presence of Rona in the room. Her mana was overflowing from her body, so Elmina thought she was a demon king or something. However, that was impossible, so she thought her mana search was broken. If she had this much mana, it would mean a true demon lord or something. Rona's presence broke the observation crystal into pieces. Rona looked right into Elmina's eyes with a scary face and stated that she knew she realized her power. That crystal could measure up to a maximum of 999, and yet it was destroyed without even being touched. She was puzzled because someone like her shouldn't even need to become an adventurer. She then realized that she could be Rona Hermit, and that she needed to torture and kill. However, she didn't want to believe this because banishing someone like her made no sense. Rona's face changed and she bowed while introducing herself. Elmina screamed her lungs out like she saw a monster. She was still in denial that a girl like her was banished from her family. She started to freak out about how she was going to fail a girl who was like a demon king. Thinking that there must be another way, she tried to calm herself down. For now, she decided to find some reason to send her away calmly. Before Elmina say something, her worker disqualified Rona. He explained that they only had an A-rank skill holder, the Witch of Annihilation Elmina Manafire. Those who upset her weren't needed in this guild, as Elmina said. Rona was puzzled while Elmina prayed that the man stop shifting the hate on her. The other candidates were making fun of her, not knowing that she had the power to destroy all of them in a second. She looked at Rona and noticed that she was trembling. She assumed that this was because of her anger, and at this rate she was going to kill everyone. So she freaked out and scolded the man for not being fair to her. She apologized to her and offered her seat. While Rona was sitting, Rona and the other candidates noticed Elmina's crest. It was the symbol of the Gugrekas family's retainers. She panicked and smashed the crest on the table, saying that there was some dirt on her clothes. She figured that Rona was exiled and she was opposing the Gugrekas family. Her assistant was surprised because the thing she called dirt was the proof of being a Gugrekas retainer, which she always bragged about. Rona was also sure that it was the Gugrekas retainer crest. She looked at her with her scary face once again, and Elmina freaked out once again. Elmina was thinking about how she put herself in this situation. She was supposed to live a life as an elite, and now if she failed Rona, she would be killed by her, but if she didn't fail her, she would be betraying the Gugrekas family, and those who opposed the Gugrekas family would face a brutal purge. She didn't want this to happen, so she can't just give up here. She must find a way to fail Rona Hermit in the exam and ensure she never takes the test again. For that purpose, she took her to the Twilight Underground Temple. Rona got excited that she was going to enter a dungeon. Meanwhile, Elmina was pleased that she was going to fall into her trap there. Rona looked at Elmina on the internet and confirmed that she was in the service of the Gugrekas family. But judging by her attitude, she thought she was a noble person who didn't pander to power, which increased her favorability towards her. Elaine looked at them and explained that each of them would venture into the dungeon alone, and if they completed the task written on the paper she handed out earlier, they would pass. However, if they used the Wings of Return to go back, they would be disqualified without an excuse. The candidates were pleased with this test. Rona also found it easy. She looked at the task she was assigned and was shocked to see that her task was to retrieve the labyrinth core located in the deepest part of the dungeon. She questioned if everyone takes such difficult tasks for granted. When it was Rona's turn, Elmina was secretly grinning. She went inside the dungeon. It was her first time entering a dungeon, and this made her heart beat faster than normal. It was indeed a scary place. However, when she finished climbing the stairs, she was a massive place and found it beautiful. For now, she decided to focus on the exam and wondered if using the internet would be cheating. However, Rona was lazy, so she just searched it up to see the map. The deepest part was on the 9th floor. She started walking comfortably and then noticed a box with ancient metals in it. When she turned this corner, there was a monster spawning point. According to the internet map, it was within a specific range, so she used Terra Drain to immobilize the monsters. When she checked them out, she saw that it was a success. Their MP was down to 0, and now it was her chance. She used Small Ice to defeat the giant bats. She wondered if this test was supposed to feel that easy. She felt a bit guilty for the adventurers out here who can't use the internet. But the scenery was beautiful, and it was like a picnic. Meanwhile, Elmina's assistant was trying to understand why she sent her to a dangerous place with an unreasonable task. The Twilight Underground Temple hadn't even been conquered beyond its 2nd floor. Dungeons were generally designed so that you can't proceed without solving certain gimmicks. But it was impossible to solve the gimmick on the 2nd floor of this dungeon. After all, no one even knows what needs to be solved. The text required to solve the gimmick was written in a mysterious language, and even though many adventurers tried, no one had yet succeeded in deciphering it. Furthermore, as soon as you descend to the 2nd floor, you would be trapped in a hall by a trip, and the only way to escape is to use a return item. However, the Wings of Return, not Rona Hermit, were fake, meaning she was going to be trapped on the 2nd layer. The assistant asked if it was necessary to go this far. Elmina just told him to not ever dare to complain about her decision. Meanwhile, the man was thinking how she was about to pick a fight with the Gugrekas family with all her might earlier. If Elmina managed to seal away such a monster, she would surely be in favor of the Gugrekas family, and this would add shine to her elite life. Meanwhile, Rona had already cleared the 4th layer with the instructions she got from the internet. Originally, this dungeon was supposed to test intelligence, but if you know the solution, it didn't matter. She felt sorry for the person who created this dungeon. When she finally arrived at the 9th floor, she felt like it was too easy to get in there. The next task was the boss battle. When she defeats the boss and retrieves the labyrinth core, she is going to pass the exam. She pulled herself together and looked at the internet to see what she was supposed to do. Just having information wasn't enough to understand the strength, and she wanted to hear someone's first-hand opinion. She then wondered who writes in a place like that and claimed that it might be a conversation of gods. After all, the internet was like a bookshelf of the gods. This made her a little freaked out as she didn't know if it was okay for someone like her to look at something so sacred. But it was too late now, so she tried to not care about that. When she looked, she noticed that the gods she thought were quarreling. Surely it was a high-dimensional conflict beyond human imagination. She didn't even understand what some words they used meant, so she decided to pretend she didn't know that. She checked the other gods' opinions and saw that opinions that the boss was weak stood out. This made her a little bit more comfortable about fighting with the boss. The door in front of her was supposed to open when she said the keyword. She said that she was the one who engraved the number of the beast loudly to the door, and the door started to open without any problem. Inside was dark and dusty. She was having a hard time seeing, but then noticed that something was dripping from above. When she looked high, she saw the deadly monster boss. The dragon boss growled fiercely, and Rona immediately started to run away, screaming that she couldn't do that. However, the door she entered wasn't opening, which could only mean she couldn't get out until she defeated the boss. She wondered if she was deceived by the internet, but there was no way the internet could lie. She looked at the legs of the boss and saw that it was chained. However, it was still scary enough to freak her out. She used a small flame to get it out of her way. It was an SSS rank staff, so it did damage but wasn't enough. She needed to search for this dragon on the internet before she got killed. However, when she opened the internet, she got a warning that there was a risk of a system crash because of a virus. She pressed OK to recover it, but the boss was not patient with her. She used small ice to gain some time. When she finally looked it up, she saw that there was a safe zone. The safe zone was behind the stone altar. Without giving any more thought, she used her boar charge and started to speed run. She successfully threw herself behind the altar and wondered if she was safe. The boss growled once again, which was the pre-action breath she was warned about. Luckily, she was in the safe zone as the boss's flame couldn't even reach her. She wondered if it was because of its size. If she kept hitting it with long-range attacks from the top of the stone altar, there was a chance she could win. First things first, she used Terra Drain, and then Small Ice until she got tired. Because she had been walking non-stop until now, she was exhausted. She started eating an Ipru pie to gain some energy and continued to fight. She was using a Small Ice on the boss, but it was taking a lot of time as it had lots of HP. When she was hitting it, the chain holding the boss broke and now it was flying. She recalled reading that its attack patterns changed when its HP decreased. She used a small light to make it blind for a second and tried to read what she was supposed to do when it flew. While it was struggling on the ground, she used Terra Drain followed by Small Ice, and then finally a small light when it tried to jump again. The boss eventually collapsed, and she was thrilled. However, the dragon seemed a little stupid as it kept coming at her with the same pattern. It felt like she was bullying it one-sidedly, which she felt bad about, but she had to defeat it, or she would be killed. She decided to finish it off with full power Small Ice. The dragon boss froze with her full power, and she gained 66 experience points, leading her to level up to 42. While she was celebrating her win against the boss, a box appeared right next to her. She wondered if it was a reward and how it appeared. She remembered what she read about the defeat rewards. She decided to open it with curiosity, and inside the box, there was the armor she had always wanted. She teared up while hugging her new armor because she had always worried about her defense until now. She won thanks to the divine wisdom of the high ground trap, but if she had been hit even slightly, she would have been dead now. After all, defense was more important than attack power. She wore the armor but was too lazy to read how it was so strong. She decided to check her stats instead and saw that she had become incredibly strong. Level 40 was like being among the strongest in the country. It was nice to level up even though she wasn't aiming for that. She thought about the idea of becoming the strongest in the world and ending up saving the world, and this made her giggle. She left the dungeon thinking how impossible this was. Next, we see Elmina's shocked face. She reluctantly came to investigate the situation, but she had never heard of such powerful magic. The second floor had been breached. She couldn't even believe Rona could decipher a mysterious language in just a short time. The only one who could do this was that demon king, but she didn't give any thought to this. She then felt something and used her mana search to look. She saw that every direction was filled with immense mana, the mana that was emitted by the opponent. The situation was bad. The man was so dense that she couldn't breathe and couldn't even see the opponent. Suddenly a feather dropped on her face and she saw Rona with her wings greeting her. She was shocked to see her and was almost sure she wasn't a human. Rona reached her and Elmina saw that the space was distorting. She was sure she was done for it. However, Rona was just showing that she brought the core of the dungeon's labyrinth. Elmina was frozen. She was taken aback by her that she was able to get the legendary space magic because it was a thing that hadn't even been observed in A-rank skills. Moreover, with this amount of mana, she was sure that there wasn't any trick. That means she completely conquered the dungeon in a short time. Rona wanted to confirm that she passed the test, but Elmina didn't want to say that out loud. She must declare her failure, otherwise her elite life would end. For now, she decided to escape, so she didn't say anything and started walking out of the dungeon. Rona cut her way and asked where she was going. Elmina was so terrified by her that she gave her the news. Rona was thrilled to hear that she passed the test. While she was celebrating and dancing, Elmina was thinking about the reason why the Gugrekas family banished her. Rona remembered something and told Elmina to take care of her life. She seemed puzzled, so Rona said that she might die soon, and she should be careful, which could only mean that Rona was going to kill her in Elmina's mind. While Rona was walking out of the dungeon happy and healthy, Elmina was standing there. She didn't want to get involved with such a monster anymore, but she didn't know yet that in the future, they would be involved with each other many times. Meanwhile, Rona was thinking about how good Elmina was and how nice it was for her to come inside the dungeon to check on her. She felt bad that Elmina died in Chapter 5 of Part 1 of the main story according to the internet, but there was nothing she could do other than warn her to be careful. The enchanted wing skill on this robe seemed convenient and nice to her. With that, she wouldn't get tired from walking anymore. And since she leveled up, the item box appeared unexpectedly and had an expanded capacity of 50, which means she could carry 50 items. It was a skill that stored what she had in a different space, making it easy to carry luggage so much easier. The next morning, she was showing her adventurer card to Reinhardt. Reinhardt was so happy that he saw her again and mentioned that starting as a silver rank was unprecedented. Rona explained that it was because she crushed the card several times. After all, she couldn't hold her strength due to the rapid level up. Reinhardt laughed and commented on how amazing she was. He then noticed that something was wrong, so he asked. Rona asked if he was always this much energetic. Reinhardt explained that it was thanks to Rona healing his knee. Before he met her, he was as good as dead. But thanks to her, he was saved and began to see hope in life. He was reminded of how beautiful the world could be and wished to become an adventurer who could save others like Rona. Reinhardt then asked if she was taking on a request right away, and Rona confirmed with him, but she said that it was just a simple herb gathering. Despite having such power, taking on humble yet helpful tasks like that impressed Reinhardt. She explained that it was better for her to start with something easy, and herb gathering seemed good for earning money. Reinhardt thought about it for a moment and remembered that there was a strange disease spreading in town lately, so there was an increased demand for medicinal herbs. It was helpful for many people just like Rona. But Reinhardt found it dangerous to go on adventure alone. While he was talking about how dangerous and hard it would be for her, she opened her wings and started flying, so he took back everything he said. Rona left there with lots of questions in Reinhardt's mind. Talking to her made him feel like his world was so small, and he decided to continue working on his rehabilitation to catch up with her as soon as he could. Meanwhile, Elmina was at her home thinking about Rona and the end of the world. According to the internet, the location of the medicinal herb should be somewhere near, so she landed on the ground. However, she fell on the floor as she wasn't used to flying. More importantly, she needs to find medicinal herbs. She saw an herb and immediately smiled with happiness at the fact that she could earn a lot of money with that herb. Last night, she studied on the internet to avoid panicking in such situations as the dragon fight. She then saw that the exploration of ancient ruins by adventurers leads to the revival of ancient magic civilizations, kings, and demon tribes who plot to conquer the world. There was so much she didn't know and wanted to ask questions someone. Luckily, she noticed that she could also write on that bulletin board. And being able to write there means she could talk directly to a god. She was once again grateful for this internet skill, but it might be trouble if the church found out, as she didn't want to be worshipped as a saint. She didn't even know if they would answer a mere human's troubles. She thought about stopping, but she had already come this far. She wrote her question and sent it. Her question was how to earn money in the town of iPhone. Before she got an answer, she started to panic, but not so long later she got some answers. However, the answers weren't as good as she thought they would be. Some of them asked her to take off her clothes, and some were just talked like crazy idiots. She seemed confused. She thought that the gods were too high-dimensional for her to understand. Thankfully, one of the gods gave her a good idea. They told her to mass-produce Marlboro leaves. She was watering them with a watering can, and then the Marlboro lead would be in a cultivation state. She was going to harvest only the leaves without cutting the roots. If the roots remain, the herb's HP stays at 1. It was true that they grew endlessly. The thought of growing money from the ground made her pretty comfortable. She produced the herbs for a while. To Rona, the Marlboro leaf looked like nothing but silver coins. Since the purchase price for one Marlboro leaf was 50,000 sil, she would have 50 million. According to the guide site, selling all at once apparently lowers the price, so it wasn't good. If she had an item box, she could store them. Selling them bit by bit should be fine. She needs to convert them into cash first. While flying, she looked at the map to find her way back, but then saw that there was a mark on the map. She thought this might mean the starting point for a subquest. Suddenly, she heard a scream. A little girl with elf ears was running away from wolves, but she couldn't even move a bit. She guards herself with her weapon, but even though she practices magic hard, she can't weave any spells at all. She didn't want to accept her death when she couldn't even save her mother. But a miracle happened, and before she was caught by the wolves, they froze. She was speechless because this wasn't humanly possible. It was almost like it was caused by a god. She then looked above and saw Rona with her wings and called her a god. Rona landed safely and stated that she wasn't a god. The girl then noticed her staff. It was the legendary staff from the elf mythology, the staff of the world tree. When a crisis comes upon the world, it was said that a savior would wield this staff. When she called her a savior, she refused that she was. So the girl thought Rona didn't want to be a savior. She then asked if she was sent by God to fulfill her wish. Rona was confused but thought about her internet gods, so it didn't seem impossible. The girl then asked her to save her mother in the elf village with tears in her eyes. Rona was so confused that she couldn't even say no, so it was an official request now. The description of her subquest was to investigate the mystery of the elf epidemic with the elf princess Erna. Recommended level was also 50, so she wasn't sure if she was ready for this. Erna held her hand and started to drag her to her village. She warned her to hold her hand properly, otherwise she may never be able to return. If Rona remembers correctly even, though she had heard of it when she was cooped up in her mansion, this place was the Lost Forest. According to Erna, the elves had cast a lost mist barrier to hide the village, but it was kind of scary and Rona wanted to go back. Suddenly they were surrounded by a bunch of archers telling Rona to leave. Erna tried to explain to them that Rona wasn't a bad human. One of them noticed that it was Princess Erna protecting Rona, so they asked what she intended to do to the princess. Rona realized that she had gotten involved with someone extremely noticeable. She explained herself by saying that she didn't plan to do anything, and that she had just taken it there. They told her to cut the lie and stated that they knew she caused a natural disaster in this forest. Rona was panicking, sweating, thinking about how they knew this. They knew from the amount of her mana that it could not be anyone but her. One of them was about the faint because of how massive her mana was. There seemed to be chaos between elves as some were trying to calm the one who was about to faint, while the others were questioning Rona's intentions. Rona was just shocked that she was in this situation when all she wanted was to gather some herbs. While she was wishing to go back to her job again, Erna yelled at everyone to calm down. She told them to look at the staff Rona was holding. The other elves were shocked to see her holding the legendary world tree staff spoken of in elf mythology. They already figured that Rona could be the prophesied savior of the elf community. While Erna was filling their heads with the hope that she came to save their village in its time of crisis, Rona was just looking at them with empty faces. The others felt incredibly bad for behaving like that to a person who came to their village to save them. They got on their knees and apologized to their savior. Confused and humble-looking, Rona was just hoping that this wouldn't turn into a big deal, but it didn't seem like her wish come true. In the next chapter, Rona's father talks to a woman through a crystal. The woman informed him that thanks to him they were making good money and their plan was going smoothly. All thanks to the enormous financial and mana support. With this power, she mentioned, it would surely lead to the prosperity of the Gugrekus family. After their discussion ended, Lord Gugrekus was thinking about how everything went wrong after kicking Rona out. However, he was counting on their last trump card not to end their family. Meanwhile, Rona was amazed by the hidden elf village. Erna was glad to hear compliments about her village from the saint. However, Rona then noticed that people were lying on the ground motionless because of their sickness. She asked about the strange disease that makes people miserable. Erna was surprised because even though she hadn't told her about that, she already knew about it. Rona tried to play it cool, but she looked it up on the internet, and she assumed that the crisis the elves were talking about must be this disease. Rona wished to do something about this disease, but it wasn't something she could handle. She wished to find something on the internet that would give her the hint. She looked around and asked Erna where she could buy elf juice and elf crackers. Erna apologized to her because they couldn't make them anymore because of the strange disease. That seemed to be the last straw for Rona, and she promised Erna that she would do something about this strange disease. They arrived at Erna's house, which seemed more like a castle. Erna was just so touched that she was so determined for someone she just met. It was hard for Rona to say it was a bit of an impure motive, so she didn't say anything. From behind a door, Erna stated to her mother that she brought the savior. Her mother told them to come in and looked at Rona. All Rona could think was how beautiful that woman was. Rona introduced herself and the elf queen apologized for the state of things despite her visit. The queen noticed that the world tree staff wasn't with her at that moment, but she could still sense something godlike, like the essence of the world in her. While Rona was thinking about how she had it in private mode right now to not let anyone see it, she noticed the queen's glare. She was nervous that the queen would sense something, but the queen just told the maid to prepare a feast. She suddenly started coughing hard, making everyone nervous about her situation. Her maid named Zarich warned her to not speak too much as it was bad for her health and handed her some medicine. The queen apologized to Zarich, complimented her medicine, and called her a savior. Zarich was honored. She then looked at Rona elusively and stated that if she were a true savior, she would be able to cure such a disease immediately. The queen warned her not to be harsh on herself. Erna asked about her mother's situation. She seemed hesitant to speak about it, but the queen told her that it was okay. She said that her condition wasn't good and that if they had that one ingredient, they could make the elf's secret medicine. Rona was puzzled. Erna started to cry as she felt guilty for not being able to find the ingredients in the forest. Her mother comforted her and they hugged each other tightly. While all the drama happening in front of her, Rona just felt so out of place. Zarich excused herself to see the other patients. When she opened the door, Rona could hear the sick people who were begging Zarich for medicine. Rona felt like she heard her name somewhere. While Zarich was walking, she could not stop herself from laughing. Turns out her pollen, once dispersed, was colorless and odorless and impossible to avoid as it mixes with the air. And if conditions are right, it could travel hundreds of kilometers. As an experiment, she first spread a poisonous pollen, and it was a great success for her. The only way to alleviate the symptoms was to use her medicine. Moreover, the strongest flower in the world, the Queen of Heart Rose blooms. She was going to become the queen of this world. With that, even the great elven queen and those arrogant members of the Gugrekas family who order her around would soon be groveling at her feet. While she was imagining her victory, she noticed that it was almost time for the medicine, so she took her bag. However, when she turned back to give people their medicine, she was shocked to see people celebrating in perfectly healthy bodies. She was puzzled because those who inhaled the poison pollen shouldn't be able to move so energetically. She then saw Rona mixing something in a boiler. Erna and the queen were calling people to give them more medicine, and the queen seemed perfectly healthy too. She figured that Rona had found the elven secret medicine. However, she was a pharmacist and she knew better than anyone that the elf's secret medicine could not be mass-produced. Taro leaf, the main ingredient, wasn't something that could be easily obtained, and yet everyone was drinking it like water. She was having a hard time believing everything. People saw her and started looking at her with hostility. They knew that she was the one who was spreading the poison. Zarich was confused as hell about how her secret got exposed. She threw the medicines on the ground and started running away. The queen wasn't sure if Zarich's escape was okay, but Rona stated that they hadn't prepared a countermeasure for Zarich yet. According to the internet information, the skill level of alchemy mastery increases according to the amount of MP consumed in alchemy. Fortunately, she had an inexhaustible supply of MP. The elf's secret medicine required a lot of MP for alchemy, so it was the perfect condition for rapidly increasing her skill level. She was glad she did the infinite harvesting of Mabaro leaf needed for the elf's secret medicine. However, it was a surprise that Zarich was an enemy that she seemed to recall. She felt like she received a terrible spoiler when she realized this, but now, she could prepare countermeasures against status abnormalities. She told everyone to enjoy the banquet and excused herself. Erna asked where she was going, and she answered saying that she was going to stop Zarich's ambition for now. While she was walking away, Erna was looking at her, admiring Rona's brave character. Zarich was inside her greenhouse thinking she was safe. Suddenly, Lord Gugrekas' voice was heard, and he was asking if something was wrong. She knew they would cut off their support if they found out about this, so she tried to convince him that everything was going smoothly, with a voice tone that made him have a hard time understanding her. While Lord Gugrekas was questioning her, all she could think about was how the elves' secret medicine was mass-produced. Her hidden schemes were seen through, and her trust in this village had plummeted in just a few hours. Of course, she blamed everything on Rona. She wondered who she was and how she could be a savior. She decided to have a last resort. She looked at the Queen of Heart Rose and decided to gather all the mana that was circulating inside the greenhouse into the Queen of Heart Rose to hasten its blooming. By using the people enslaved by this flower, if she increased the Queen of Heart Rose everywhere, her territory would expand, and she would eventually become a queen ruling the world. The thought of this made her blush through her cheeks, and she knew that all she needed to do was buy time until the Queen of Heart Rose bloomed. She considered this greenhouse as her house. Suddenly, Rona made a great entrance from above the greenhouse. Zarich was once again shocked, and she also noticed that she was holding something dangerous as she descended. Rona also seemed startled. She felt strange because the internet map said there was a hidden passage, but it turned out to be more of a physical shortcut. Even though Zarich was shocked, she wasn't intimidated by her because they were in her poison garden. She said that if she came to defeat her, the moment she entered this greenhouse, her defeat was certain. Rona asked what she meant, and she said that it was about time that her special poison pollen showed the effects. Even if Rona knew everything, she claimed that it was impossible to deal with all the status ailments scattered in this greenhouse, and even if she had the elves' secret medicine, if she was paralyzed or asleep, she couldn't drink it. She asked her to show her a dance of agony and then started giggling. However, her giggles stopped once she noticed that there was no difference in Rona's situation. She tried to understand why it wasn't working. Rona apologized with a cute face and showed her the doll she was holding. A substitute doll made beforehand in the village that, for some reason, took her form. According to the internet, the correct effect of the substitute doll was to continue to substitute attacks until its HP was depleted. So, the poison pollen type status attacks that don't cause physical damage could be endlessly substituted. The plan was easy. She was just going to attack from outside the poison plant's range. Suddenly, Lord Gugrekas asked if she was okay out there. While Zarich was panicking, trying to explain that there was nothing wrong, Rona was surprised to see her father's voice. He ended their conversation by saying that Zarich was the last trump card. Rona figured out that the ones who had been tormenting the queen and Erna were the Gugrekas family. Even though she was banished, she was a member of the Gugrekas family, which was enough for her to feel terrible. With a determined voice, she stated that she was going to deal with her family issues and not let anyone suffer anymore. She used Terra Train to absorb the mana from the poison plants and then created a small but not small flame to burn all the plants. Zarich was freaking out, and she was even more panicked as the flame was about to reach the Queen of Heart Rose. However, her screams weren't enough to stop the flame, so the Queen of Heart Rose was destroyed. Experience points, new magics, and the title of the Destroyer of Queen Rose were acquired by Rona immediately. Zarich was still in denial about the fact that her perfect plan was defeated by a single girl. She noticed that Rona used wide area annihilation magic, but Rona corrected her, saying that it was just a beginner's magic spell. After that sentence, Zarich knew there was no way she could win against Rona. In the next scene, we see Rona explaining Zarich's plan to enslave people using the charming pollen of a monster named Queen of Heart Rose, and how she defeated her. She then went outside and saw people still celebrating while drinking the medicine she made. The little kids were playing a little bit creepy, so this made her scared for a second. Queen and Erna came and asked if she was enjoying herself. Erna once again stated her gratefulness to her. She then asked if she had many adventures, which made her think about the things happened since she was exiled. Erna heard that to obtain the staff world trees, one must clear many difficult trials, so she was wondering how she overcame those trials. Rona recalled the time she cheated to get the staff even though it was something important to the elves. She made her decision and apologized to the queen and Erna. She then stated that she was a person from the Gugrekas family, and started talking about what happened until now. After telling them everything, Erna seemed angry. However, to Rona's surprise, she was angry that they exiled a cool savior like her from her home. The queen was more curious about her skill to hear the words of the gods. Rona asked if they were angry. Because she was the daughter of those who cooperated with Zarich, she obtained the staff important to the elves in a deceitful way. She added that she was returning this stuff to the elves. She knew that without the staff she couldn't use powerful magic, and if she continued her journey she would die. So her journey ended there. Erna said that she was worried about such things, and she thought it was a small worry for someone with such a great power. In the first place, it wasn't about the trials. It was about what she achieved with that staff. The queen continued, stating that the elves had seen it. Rona saved this village and the world. She was a splendid savior in anyone's eyes since she was chosen for her skill in hearing the words of the gods. Those words made Rona blush and feel shy as she received a lifetime's worth of praise just today. But still, the queen didn't expect to hear the Gugrekas family's name again. Rona asked if she knew her family before, and she said that they had been disturbing the great spirit veins of this forest before, and she thought they had quieted down after she warned them. According to what she heard from Zarich, it seemed they were conspiring with her to seize control of this forest. She didn't blame Rona at all and mentioned that she had already warned them. Since they broke the non-aggression treaty and mistreated their benefactor, it was time. If they hadn't treated Rona so poorly, only looking at short-term gains and losses, they might have been enjoying great prosperity by now. The queen started laughing in a scary way, which scared Rona. Erna then invited Rona to their home to stay at night as it was late. Rona wasn't sure but accepted her offer. At the castle, the queen and Erna were looking at the internet with Rona. Nothing happened when they touched it, and they couldn't even understand what it was written. The queen felt frustrated as she couldn't read what the gods were saying even though it was right in front of her. She asked what it said to Rona. Rona stated that it says grass, which meant laughter in the language of the gods. She mentioned that there were also other forms of laughter in their language. The queen added a meaning to this grass thing and thought that comparing people's smiles to grass was truly godly. They started using this expression like a pro and laughed together. The next day arrived, and it was time for Rona to leave. She thanked them for everything. The queen asked if she intended to stay there forever, because although she was a human, the elves cherished her as their savior, and offered her a life without any hardships. Rona stated that if she had just started her journey and if she didn't know how to use the internet, she would stay, but she had realized something. She wanted to travel, eat delicious food, see beautiful scenery, and meet lots of people. She realized that all of this was truly enjoyable thanks to all of them. Now it would be impolite to hold her back, so the queen didn't insist on her offer. She entrusted her with a charm as a token of their friendship with the elves. With this charm, human kings and nobles would likely provide her convenience. Rona was hesitant about accepting such an important item, but this was nothing compared to what she had given to them. So the queen comforted her. She also didn't forget to tell her that she could return any time and they would always be her friends, and this place would always be her home. After promising that she would return someday, they said their goodbyes, and it was time to go. The next chapter begins with Elmina preparing for an escape. She was saying goodbye to her elite life. She didn't seem to worry about Rona anymore. She had secured multiple escape routes. It was a foolproof elite escape under cover of night. Suddenly she felt an aura coming at her. After a few seconds, Rona entered through the window. While Rona was concerned about the broken window, Elmina was questioning everything, including the fact that Rona knew her address like it wasn't a big deal. Rona asked if she was about to go somewhere. Elmina accepted that she couldn't escape from her, so she said that she wasn't going. She then asked why she was there. Rona explained that she went to the hidden village of the elves, so she thought she would bring back some souvenirs. The souvenir for Elmina was the Queen of Rose's crown. While Elima was in shock trying to figure out what was happening, Rona stated that she also got this in the hidden village of the elves. She said that some enemy dropped it when she defeated them. This made Elmina misjudge her in her mind again, claiming that it was a coup d'etat. Speaking of which, Elmina was almost positive that the disaster in Ypres Forest was Rona Hermit's doing, but now that she thought about it, the damage was concentrated near the Lost Mist. Considering such hostile actions, there was no way she could have entered the elves' hidden village. She was terrified and wondered if the disaster was caused by the destruction of the hidden village from outside the barrier. Rona kept talking about the enemies, and how there were so many that cleaning them up was tough. She also mentioned how the enemies dropped a lot of items, so she ended up making a bit of profit. She said that after defeating so many enemies, she received lots of gems and food from the elves. Elmina was sure that she would end up like the enemies Rona was talking about, and this thought made her cry her eyes out. When Rona asked why she was crying, she begged her to not kill her. Rona thought she was crying for the defeated monsters. She thought Elmina was like a saint. Besides, as she was the guildmaster, she thought Elmina was earning a lot, yet she was living a modest life because her house was empty. She assumed that Elmina was using most of her earnings to assist new adventurers and for donations. She insisted that the rare-looking crown she brought would suit her, but Elmina refused. After that, she gave the Maboro leaf to Elmina. When she brought out the 1,000 Maboro leaf, she refused to buy them, but she was glad she could sell 100. Rona mentioned to Elmina that she was going to leave this town and wanted to say goodbye. Elmina was speechless. Rona bowed and thanked her for everything. Eventually, Elimna talked and asked if she was no longer needed. Rona was surprised. She didn't understand what Elmina meant by no longer needed, but couldn't ask back as there was a line behind her. She decided to say something to not be rude and then left the shop. After she left, Elmina could not stop herself from falling on the floor. Meanwhile, Lord Gugrekus was wondering what was happening because he couldn't get in contact with both Elmina and Zarich. Suddenly, one of her sons came inside his room saying that the royal knights were attacking. Lord Gugrekus was shocked. His son continued, stating that they didn't have enough forces in this mansion, and they had no choice but to use their soldiers as decoys and escape through the secret passage. Lord Gugrekus agreed, and he wondered if their plans in the elves' hidden village would be exposed, or if it was about the disappearance of the Great Spirit Vein. He was sure that the Gugrekas lineage wouldn't be over if they survived. Suddenly, Elhauer, the elves' queen, appeared in the room and greeted him. The lord asked why she was here. He thought she was supposed to be on the brink of death. The queen didn't answer his question and tied him up with one move. Lord Gugrekus asked why she was doing this while sweating. Elhauer found it strange to ask this as he harmed her precious people. She, with a deadly eye, stated that she was furious. Beep beep. Lord Gugrekus was both scared and confused as she was speaking in an ancient language. Elhauer said the main reason she came here was because their savior, Lady Rona, was troubled by his presence. She had decided to eliminate him from this land so that Rona could return here without concerns. Lord Gugrekus was even more surprised that Rona's name came up. Elhauer realized that he didn't know anything and found it ironic that after all his obsession with power, he ended up banishing her daughter, who was the strongest witch. He couldn't believe what she was saying and asked what she meant by that. Elhauer ignored him and found it foolish that humans couldn't even do a proper investigation before banishing her. Elhauer decided to stop this conversation. He started to freak out and question why his plan didn't go well. Elhauer didn't want to hear him scream like that, so she finished him off quickly. The soldiers thanked her for her cooperation and caught him. She then noticed the ancient technology crystal. With the seeds of the Queen of Heart Rose, something smells fishy. It felt like the presence of dark forces had been increasing lately. However, if Rona was here, the world would be fine. In the next scene, a bunch of men are gathered and share their worries with someone named Brethren. Brethren stated that there was no problem because inside the Fortress of Thunder, in addition to the lightning interception system by the artifact, it was protected by the strongest around the Thunder Lion, Elion. No one under the 60 level could reach there, but the others were also thinking about that irregular person, the one who destroyed the Gugrekus forces. He said that he completely dominated the elves and made even the Gugrekus family, Elmina and Zarich, who were under the evil dragon cult, submit to him. It seemed like they had no idea it was just a little girl who did all this. They also found it strange that the anomaly at the Twilight Underground Temple. They found her movements too perfect, as if all their information was completely exposed to him. One of them told the others to be silent and then stated that there was no change in their plans even if there was an informant. The detestable 7 goddesses and the 12 zodiac generals had weakened. Memories of the ancient Great War have faded, and they have excavated many powerful artifacts. The humans of this peace-dulled era were no longer an obstacle for them. They were planning to obtain the spell to break the seal of that person. There was no reason for them to lurk in the shadows now. It was time for them to actively move towards purifying this tainted earth. They were going to unleash their god, the apocalypse dragon Ragnarok, and purify this tainted earth. That will be the return of the era of darkness, and the ancient kingdom will rise again. They started their eternal Historia plan. Suddenly, while they were all sitting at the table, they felt Rona's incredible mana. They were all shocked at how her mana was so tense, and even if they banded together, they knew that couldn't win against her. Meanwhile, Rona was sitting there drinking her tea. Everyone was wondering who she was. The reason why Rona was there was because she wanted to have shelter until the rain stopped. Luckily, there was one chair left, and it was good that there were already people there. It was the kind of place that seemed like it might be haunted, so she could be scared alone. As they were all wearing raincoats, she thought those people were also coming for shelter from the rain. They all thought someone among them knew her, so they didn't say anything until someone mentioned her. And they got the vibe that she would erase them if they asked her name carelessly. With that much power, and knowing this place was guarded by the Thunder Lion, sitting in the highest seat as if it was natural, one of them assumed that she was a high-ranking member of the cult. Meanwhile, Rona defeated the Thunder Lion as if it was nothing, and she had no idea about the highest seat. However, the others have never heard of such a girl, and if there was an existence with so much power, it would be strange not to have heard any rumors. They asked if their fellow brethren figured something out, and he confirmed them. He asked them to look at the robe she was wearing. They claimed that it could be Apocalypse Dragon Ragnarok. They had only seen it once in an ancient ruin mural, but it must have been the robe beloved by that person in their human days. However, that person was supposed to have been sealed in the underground. They all were almost positive that Rona was that person they were talking about. Meanwhile, Rona was still looking at them confused. She felt like she had been watching for a while now and used her item box. The men were confused and started praying. They thought they were experiencing a fraction of that person's power, so they didn't say or do anything. Rona seemed to figure out something. She noticed that they didn't have luggage and thought their stuff might be burned by the lightning outside. They had been whispering in hoarse voices and glancing over there, and not this hand-clasping pose made her conclude that they were just thirsty. Meanwhile, one of them was sure that this must be a test. He had never heard about that person's seal being broken and assumed that he abandoned the sealed dragon's body and transferred his soul to another. Approaching without saying anything was to test whether they would recognize him despite his change in appearance and whether they could offer unwavering faith. Thinking this way made everything sense. Rona asked them if they would all like to drink too, and they paused for a second. They then thought that the trial was deemed a pass, and thought it was such a merciful thing to do. As they were so impressed by her, they bowed and stated that they were all following her faithfully. Rona thought they were so thirsty that they showed their gratitude like that, and she was glad that they weren't scary people. She wished to approach them sooner. Interactions like those at a shelter from the rain were also the essence of traveling. Traveling was not about natural disasters, world domination conspiracies, or being worshipped as a savior. It was about those normal things like drinking tea with a bunch of strange-looking men. Rona assumed that they were hungry as they had no luggage with them, and then she had an idea. The scary-looking men who were trying to destroy the world were now cooking a meal while sweating. Rona was reading the ingredients and instructions like mixing the eggs and adding olive oil bit by bit. The men were mixing up the ingredients to make mayonnaise. Rona explained that the gods can't live without inhaling this mayonnaise, and when traveling to other worlds, making mayonnaise was a necessity. Moreover, it was said to be an excellent emergency or portable food due to its rich energy content. They thought it resembled those infamous elven-baked sweets. If such a divine portable food were perfected, war itself would change. When one of them questioned if this mixture of egg, vinegar, and oil solidified, the others scolded him for doubting that person. And now it was time to show their faith in her. Rona was just glad that she bought the ingredients. It turned out to be a good way to kill time, and maybe because they were hungry, they were cooperating eagerly. When she stated that this kind of group activity was fun, they all agreed. However, the mixture of the ingredients wasn't solidifying well. The people in black robes didn't seem to be succeeding either. She thought maybe they should change their technique. She got a good idea and told everyone to look at the screen. They didn't seem to understand anything, so she explained that it was called a recipe video, and it showed how to make various things. They thought this was the Book of Creation. However, when she opened the first video, it did not seem like a cooking video. A cult that each member harboring mana surpassing that of humans, 6 demon bishops, were plotting to unleash the apocalypse dragon and destroy the world. And now they were just watching a video titled, "Create Your Own Naughty Little Sister," and were aiming to do that. Rona tried to explain to them that this wasn't what she wanted and it was just an advertisement. She noticed that she needed to wait 13 seconds to skip the ad. All she wanted was to make mayonnaise, and now she had to see something like that. After they watched the video, they successfully made the mayonnaise and celebrated their faith in the god. But they were still curious about the reason why liquid solidified without any magic or skills. The other one explained that it was the essence of alchemy, a crystallization of wisdom that deviates from the world system of skills and magic. That person Rona intended to convey its existence, they thought. However, Rona was just happy that everyone enjoyed making mayonnaise. She then remembered to take a photo of everyone for the completion of the mayonnaise. She bought a camera in the town of Ifone for moments like this. They all posed and took a photo in silence. Rona seemed to like the outcome. Now that the photo session was over, it was time to eat. They started to eat the mayonnaise happily. After that, Rona explained to them how to and how long they could store Mayone. She then mentioned that the failed ones can be delicious as a coating. The men stated that they would carefully enshrine it in the temple, and in exchange they gave her an artifact known as a summoning stone. They explained that it can summon anyone registered in it for a certain period, so if she need their help, she could use that to call them. Rona was thrilled by this gift, and she considered them as her BFFs. After thanking them for everything, she started to fly away. As she was flying, the cult members were admitting that they had the best time. They didn't even know when was the last time they felt this way. They then noticed that the Thunder Marsh was frozen. While Rona was flying, she was thinking about how kind they were and how glad she was to start traveling. Speaking of which, Rona wanted to go to the royal capital to establish a base for her journey, so she was planning to head to Port Town Aquas, where the ship to the capital departs. She looked at the correct way and saw the beautiful sea in front of her. She was excited to eat the seafood and see lots of places to have fun. She also wanted to see the sea at least once. While looking at the sea and smelling the scent of the sea, she remembered the time she read that smell was similar to human bad breath, coming from the decay of sea creatures. She was indeed so happy to experience this, even though her vocabulary was not enough to express her feelings. She started acting normal once she noticed that people were looking at her. She used her boar charge ahead to enter the town, leaving everyone in shock. She was coming towards the people at full speed with a pretty happy face, but the people who saw her started freaking out and kept their guard up. When she showed them her adventurer card, they seemed relieved and apologized for pointing weapons at her. There had been many monsters around the town. They noticed that Rona was unaware of this information, and they thought she could help the town as she was silver rank. Rona asked what was wrong, and they said that she might be confident in her abilities, but it would be better for her to leave the town before tomorrow. Rona asked what was happening, and the woman explained that tomorrow was Wednesday. Rona was confused. She then walked away from them and encountered a woman. She said that it was rare to have guests at this time of year and asked her why she was there. Rona stated that she was here for tourism and she wasn't in a hurry, so she thought she would stay for about a week. But the woman gave her a scary look, asking if she was serious because tomorrow was Wednesday. Rona wondered what's with this Wednesday. She decided to take her time and Google it later and started to do some sightseeing. She wanted to taste the fresh seafood in this town. She looked for a fish shop, but the shops were all closed. While wandering around looking for an open shop, she heard someone begging. She saw lots of citizens begging to be on a boat, saying that the town was finished. Rona wondered if she was cursed as she kept encountering incidents wherever she went, but she hasn't done anything yet this time, so she can't be in the wrong. When she asked one of them what was going on, the man told her that they had to run from Wednesday. He said that they didn't want to abandon their hometown, but there was this thing called the real day of the week in the world. They were all expressing their hate towards that day. The hatred towards Wednesday was intense. She decided to look it up on the internet. She saw her day of the week quest. Apparently on Wednesday, monsters massively spawned in the town, and it was a chance to get water attribute materials and luxurious rewards. Rona found the tone a little light, but at this rate, not only sightseeing, but even getting on the ship would be impossible. She concluded that it would be better to do something about this day of the week quest, and then wondered how the Adventurers Guild was doing. Suddenly, a piece of paper slams into her face. It was a paper from the Adventurers Guild. Rona got excited that this guild could possibly be the so-called White Enterprise. Rona went to the Adventurers Guild, but the aura inside was not what she expected. It didn't seem so home-like place, and even the receptionist was sick of her work. However, when Rona asked for her, she immediately changed her whole mood and asked if there was trouble somewhere in the town again. Rona said that she was an adventurer and she wanted to participate in the Wednesday quest. After a few seconds of silence, the receptionist jumped from happiness. She said that just recently someone ran away when they just stepped up to the challenge, and she came at the right time. There were lots of worthwhile requests piling up, and it was a great time to earn. The receptionist showed her the contract to sign. When Rona was about to sign it, a woman came and told them to stop. She was the guildmaster. She stated that even though she understood that this town was in crisis and shot on manpower, she found Rona so cute that she couldn't let her go to the battlefield. She apologized for getting her involved in the affairs of this town, and then introduced herself as the guildmaster Aries Tia Blue Moon. Rona also introduced herself and she made the face when she found her cute. She then got serious and stated that she was very happy that she had volunteered to fight for this town. But she still thought the town's Wednesday was too dangerous for her. But Rona heard that the recommended level was over 20. Aries hadn't heard about that, but she wanted her to look at the other people. She said that they were the ones who experienced this town's Wednesday, and they had a different look about them. Rona was surprised to see their face. Aries continued, saying that they underestimated Wednesday at first. Even though it was a massive outbreak of monsters, it was only once a week. They had hoped that the outbreaks would eventually end, so at first they could laugh, saying they were making profits thanks to Wednesday. However, Wednesday had been repeating for over a year. No matter how many monsters were defeated, their numbers didn't increase. Gradually, the spirits of the townspeople wore down, and then the collapse happened in an instant. Merchants and adventurers had already given up on this town, and without people or supplies, they can't even repair their workout equipment. Even fighting to that extent, the devaluation of monster materials means they don't profit. The only ones left in this town were the dead soldiers who were resigned to die with the town. That was the current situation of this town. This task seemed a lot scarier than before. She asked if that was the case, she would need more hands. Aries told her that it was okay. They alone would surely end this Wednesday someday and return to the port town of Aquas to a peaceful town like it was before, without overtime. She told Rona to come back to this town once that time came, and they would be waiting with lots of delicious things from this town. Rona thought about what to do. She wanted to quickly solve the day of the week quest and enjoy sightseeing, but she had never fought in a group, and if she joined a raid quest poorly, she wouldn't be able to coordinate, and she was still not used to handling magic. She was still inexperienced. She decided to stop participating in the Wednesday quest. Aries was glad that she understood the situation. Rona said she realized the raid quest was too soon for her, but she asked if she could exchange materials for money. Aries gladly accepted it as they needed supplies more than anything as merchants stopped coming to the town. She told her to put her materials on the counter. She understood and put her Marlboro leaf herbs on the counter. They were speechless. Aries then noticed that she had the mane of the Thunder Lion, Elion. Rona confirmed her and stated that she defeated it. Aries couldn't even believe she passed through the Thunder Marsh. Rona smiled and stated that it was a shortcut. Aries said that the only people who had ever returned from the Thunder Marsh were the party of the geniuses Swift Thunder Reinhardt, who disappeared 5 years ago. The receptionist woman confirmed, saying that he was promoted to gold rank at a young age just for that. Aries thought about making a weapon with those materials and suddenly welcomed Rona as if she entered the guild just now. As Rona seemed confused, she told her that from today onwards she was one of them. She told the other adventurers to welcome her and they all started applauding. Rona felt good even though she was confused as hell. She decided to take on the Wednesday quest. In the next scene, Rona comes to the coast to help prepare for tomorrow's Wednesday quest. She asked if this place was the Urus coast and Aries confirmed her. When Rona asked what she was supposed to do, she was interrupted by the other adventurers being shocked by how knowledgeable she was. They started to hype her up while she was looking at them all confused. The reason why they were praising her was because the fate of the town rests on her, and all they could do was to entertain her. But they weren't sure if it was working. Rona paused for a second and then seemed embarrassed, which means it's working. Aries came and explained that the Urus coast was where monsters appeared on Wednesday. If they built a barrier here to prevent the monsters from entering the town, she hoped that people would feel safe staying in the town. Rona noticed that not much progress had been made about this barrier, and asked if they would be done by tomorrow. Aries giggled and stated that if it wouldn't be finished in time, they would just have to meet them. Rona didn't quite understand, but she thought she just needed to help with building the barrier. She asked what should she do as she didn't have any construction skills. Aries stated that what they wanted from her wasn't the construction part. When she was about to explain her part, someone screamed saying that a monster had appeared. It was a big fish with legs. The people were trying to protect the wall, but it wasn't enough to stop it. The people were quite shocked because there was no reason for fish to fight on land in the first place. Aries explained that they hadn't made much progress because they lacked manpower and supplies. And monsters appeared even during normal times, so they wanted to ask her to help exterminate the monsters. Rona was just concerned about the people who were freaking out, but Aries told her that it was okay. Their guild prides itself on 0 work accidents since its founding, and she was good at healing and support. When she showed her water spirit summon, the workers saw her and started running away from her. Aries started to heal them, but they somewhat didn't want her to heal them. After they were completely healed, they went back to work. Rona decided to defeat the monsters now. Everyone seemed to be in trouble, so she didn't want to hold anything back to not stand out too much. She also had to fight seriously, so she wore the Queen Rose crown. If the monsters gather around her, she could use her real magic. This town was already at its limit, and it seemed unlikely to endure the next Wednesday. Even though it was embarrassing for Aries, the fate of this town depended on how much she could fight. The only thing she should do now was to believe in Rona and entertain her. Unexpectedly, the next monster was not like the first one. It was the Gigolodon, the master of the nearby sea. It was also the area boss. Ares told everyone to abandon the barrier and run away. While people were running away, one of them told Ares about the barriers, but there was no way they could fight against this boss, so they had to prioritize their lives now. She then noticed Rona standing there. When she told her to stay away from there, she just smiled and waved at her. She then started walking towards the Gigolodon. Gigolodon was the king of the sea. He was tired of living because he was too strong. People's countermeasures were meaningless against him. Everything was like nothing before his overwhelming power. However, to the one girl who stood before him, he paid respect, opening his mouth to eat her head on, and died like a little bug. Ares and the others were taken aback. With the experience points and lots of other things, Rona gained the title of Slayer of the Sea Boss. Rona wondered if there was a real boss or something, but no one was coming up to her saying amazing like before, so she thought it wasn't impressive. She told Ares that she defeated the monster and asked if something happened as she seemed troubled earlier. Ares, with a weak voice, told her that that had been resolved now. She was having a hard time processing how a child like her could beat a boss. She guessed that she could be an angel sent by God. While she was thinking, more monsters appeared, but she stopped them with small thunder. There were some injured people, but Ares didn't have enough MP. She asked if they had healing potions, but they were out of stock. Rona came and gave them a medicine that disappeared all their wounds in an instant. They wondered what kind of medicine it was, and she explained that it was an elf's secret potion. She stated that she still had about 200 bottles left, so they could use as much as they could. When another monster appeared, Rona thought how endless this situation was. She came up with an idea and then created a small wall. While everyone was speechless, Rona wondered what was wrong. That wall alone seemed enough for them to keep the monsters away, and Ares realized that maybe Rona alone could handle everything. Half a day left until Wednesday, and they finally had the long-desired barrier of theirs. With this barrier wall, and the formidable ally that was Rona, there was nothing longer anything to fear from Wednesday. But of course, there were still many problems, especially the serious shortage of manpower. Rona had another great idea, and took out her summoning stone. Rona didn't really know what to do to summon her friends, so she held up the stone. Ares told her to wait, as whenever she tries something amazing happens. Apparently that was how she should summon her friends, and they all arrived. The townspeople, including Ares, were shocked and scared by them. The cultmen were just trying to understand who were those people. Rona and one of them stated that their bond was eternal, and they high-fived each other like BFFs. Ares realized that they were getting along really well. Rona thanked them for coming and stated that there was something she needed them to do. They all seemed pretty ready for her word. Rona turned to Ares and told her that with that, they had more manpower. Ares asked who were those people, and she responded by saying that they were her friends. This sounded strange to her because they were emitting a sort of dark aura, but Rona said that they were kind people. Ares decided to trust her words and accepted their help. As for the equipment repairs, she stated that she would ask Blacksmith, Duardo, again. She told everyone to rest for now. Rona was feeling down as she wanted to do something now while she could, but then had an idea, but she seemed puzzled. One of her friends asked if she needed help, so she was happy. Meanwhile, Ares was trying to convince Duardo, however he strictly refused her, saying even if it was rare materials he wouldn't use weapons. When Ares told him that she would come again, he said that no matter how many times she said it, it wouldn't change anything. Duardo then noticed the men in his shop looking at the cooking corner, imagining what they could do with them. He was puzzled to see them as he knew they looked like executives of a cult trying to destroy the world from behind the scenes. Rona came and asked if he was Duardo Nikado. Duardo asked how she knew his name, so Rona explained that he was the one with A-rank blacksmith skills who forged an S-rank magic sword underground kingdom of Dongawa, and left him in shock. Duardo had been hiding this information all this time. He recalled the memory of being informed that his sword's rank was S. He couldn't believe this was possible because it was his masterpiece, made by the youngest ever to forge an A-rank sword. The soldiers explained to him that the knight who tried to test it fainted instantly, and it was too heavy to even lift. He was shocked because all he wanted was to make the strongest sword. The very first thing the king told him was how disappointed in him. Since then, he had been exiled from the country with the stigma of being a traitor. He had fled to a faraway town, trembling at the tonight of making another S-rank sword, even though he hadn't made any weapons. And now there was a little girl who knew his biggest secret. Rona said that when she mentioned the keyword strongest sword, she thought Duardo would ask in the conversation which one would be his masterpiece. The answer was the rusted sword in the umbrella stand, and he had prepared the items needed to restore it: holy tinder, high-grade charcoal, and mithril whetstone. She also defeated a swarm of missile centipedes that were about to ravage the northern mithril mine. She asked him to give her the S-rank magic sword Killing Blade Single Slash. Dwargo accepted to do it and gave her the restored sword-killing blade. Rona was so happy to have this sword. When she was holding the sword, Dwargo warned her to be careful as it could be a little heavy, but then noticed that she was holding the sword as if it were nothing. Rona turned to the others and told them that everyone gathered the required items in an hour, so she got it right away. Rona was happy to have this good sword, however the price of this sword was 111 billion on the internet. Dwargo asked if she was sure about that sword. Like she said earlier, that sword was S rank, but Rona didn't care about it because it was good, because it was this sword. Rona loved this sword because with that she wouldn't cause natural disasters in everything she attacked. The name Swordsman Rona didn't sound so bad to her. She accidentally swung the sword and broke the shop's sign in half. This was definitely not what she intended. She also achieved the title of Brutal Destroyer. The cult men were now sure she was their god. Dwargo suddenly kneeled to Rona, which made her feel guilty, and she started apologizing, but then she noticed that he was laughing. He was wondering when he started forging swords for others' approval and what he was doing if he couldn't believe in her swords. Rona apologized once again, and he told her that it was fine as he was thinking of changing the shop anyway. He asked her name and told her that he would remember her. He told her that she could come any time, and he was going to force an even stronger sword immediately. Ares came hearing the tremendous noise and asked what happened to the shop. Dwargo answered by saying he just had a good thing happen and that was all, and asked if she had the lightning attribute materials. Ares seemed surprised, so he said that there was no time to forge new weapons now, but if he worked through the night, he could at least imbue weapons with lightning attributes. Ares went to bring it right away while thanking him, but for Dwargo, Rona was the one she should be thanking. Rona was walking around in the town wondering why Dwargo wanted to forge a stronger sword because that was unnecessary. Rona created a small wall and took a swing to test her new sword. She was delighted with the quality and assumed they could make that secret weapon. While putting it in the item box, the other workers watched her as if she were an alien. They felt obligated to praise her but didn't even know where to start because she was that amazing. Ares noticed that she was doing something and asked what it was. She responded that this was a DIY. To explain, she looked if there was any other term on the internet, but there wasn't. She explained that she was making an amazing secret weapon for Wednesday. She told her to look forward to its completion. Ares was about to ask if there was something she could help with, but it didn't seem like it. Before Rona continued to work on her weapon, she told her to make sure to rest once the work was done because tomorrow they had an early final battle. Rona estimated that the work would be finished in a little while. Ares thanked her and left the workplace. She didn't know what she was trying to do, but she was really glad she came. While walking around the town, she realized that if they fail this time too, then this town may never return to normal. That's why they must end Wednesday by tomorrow. Tomorrow arrived, and once again a horde of monsters was going to attack this town. Ares was making a speech before the war began. She mentioned that many adventurers have challenged this Wednesday and failed and then fled. Wednesday was like an endless battle of death with neither honor nor reward. But still, Ares was proud of everyone who had stayed there. The adventurers responded to Ares by reminding her that everyone here knew that the guildmaster had thought more about this town and worked harder than anyone, and that was why they have followed her up until today. Despite the scary and dangerous battle they were about to have, they were all eager to fight until their last breath. After that emotional speech, Ares started giving orders. First, the defenders were going to knock the monsters back to the sea, and in that gap, the attackers would unleash a barrage of lightning attacks towards the sea. This would paralyze the monsters continuously and enable a paralysis trap. Even if there were any who slipped through, the defense squad would handle them, and she told everyone else not to be worried about what was behind them. In addition to that, Dwargo came and told the adventurers to bring their broken equipment. There were lots of people who brought food and fish to feed the adventurers. Watching them bond over this unfortunate event, Ares noticed that the entire town was uniting their strength for the first time, and this was thanks to Rona. No one had that look of utter despair like before Rona arrived. Everyone was dedicated to ending Wednesday and reclaiming their town from it. Ares also believed in them because this time they had reliable people around them. The sun was coming up, which meant the monsters were about to attack. When the clock hit 6 a.m., the Wednesday Quest Water Demon invasion raid began. They got ready to attack, but there was nothing on the sea. While they were trying to figure out what was going on, Ares noticed that the monsters were coming from above, not from the sea like they always did. Ares felt frustrated and angry because their plans and preparations were for nothing. The pattern of monsters changed as if they were mocking them. She realized that just as they did to monsters, the monsters took measures against them. She had never imagined that the monsters would take countermeasures too. They didn't know how the monsters would come out from here. Their past experiences weren't important at this point, but even so, Ariel didn't give up and encouraged everyone to get ready. However, the moment monsters touched the ground, they disappeared. Everyone was puzzled as to what happened, and they turned their heads to Rona when she said they did it. To explain, she said that this was the fastest way. Aries asked if the reason why the monster's appearance changed was because she did something. Rona confirmed her and mentioned that Wednesday never ends, but her secret weapon would help it. Everyone was confused because the monsters were dying without them doing anything. Aries nervously asked if she could explain what was happening. Rona explained that in the current environment, the basic strategy seemed to be to build a tower at the monster spawn point. If there was an obstacle at the monster spawn point, it has the property of moving upwards. By utilizing this, if they move the spawn point about 20 meters high, they could defeat all the monsters in this weekly quest with just fall damage. She also mentioned that this kind of tower for automatically hunting monsters was called a trap tower. Even though she gave her best to explain it, they still didn't get anything. Aries asked if she meant they could get through Wednesday automatically from now on with the trap tower. Rona confirmed her and stated that this was the basic strategy for the Wednesday quest. Even though it was hard to believe, the safety of the port town of Aquas was restored by Rona alone. At midnight, Aries, the people, and the adventurers gathered and celebrated their win against Wednesday. Thanks to the large amount of food dropped from items, they wouldn't have trouble finding food for a while. She was still having a hard time believing they made it through Wednesday without any casualties. Rona was being praised by the townspeople. Aries wanted to take a commemorative photo, and since it was a special occasion, she wanted Rona to change into that outfit. Rona didn't have any complaints and wore the sailor uniform. Aries' nose bled from how cute she looked. She said that her judgment wasn't wrong and she looked amazing. Rona said being stared at so much was a little embarrassing, so one of the adventurers took her away from Aries. After taking the photo, they started eating the big feast. Rona seemed to like the seafood. The sailors were so happy that their ships wouldn't be destroyed and monsters wouldn't ransack their shops or warehouses anymore. Rona then brought the tartar sauce she made and explained that it was from the mayonnaise the black-robed guys made, and it went well with fried fish. Everyone who tasted the tartar sauce seemed to like it and wanted more. After that, Rona decided to use her skills to play some music. Aries is once again amazed by Rona's skills. Everyone got ready and Rona was about to press play, but then another explicit ad showed up, making her want to disappear. After the celebrations calmed down, Aries asked Rona if she was enjoying herself. Rona thanked Aries for treating her to such a feast. She said that she should be the one who thanked her and then confessed that she had also given up and thought they couldn't end Wednesday. So she never thought a day would come when they could have such a lively time in this town again. She couldn't stop herself from tearing up a bit. She wiped out her tears and thanked Rona once again. Rona responded that she should be the one thanking her, but if she really wanted to thank someone, she should thank the gods. It was hard to explain, but she basically stated that she had a skill that lets her hear the words of the gods. It wasn't her who came up with this plan, and it was the gods. Aries confirmed her thoughts after hearing Rona's words. She now knew that Rona was an angel. She then remembered that they needed to discuss the usage fees for Wall Rona and Trap Tower, because they can't just let her use those for free. Though there was no precedent, she can't give her an exact amount right away. She showed her the estimated amount of money that would be transferred to the guild account weekly, and Rona's jaw dropped. The number was so high that she said she couldn't accept that much, and besides, she made it on her accord, but Aries explained that they were going to be using it anyway. And originally, the amount wasn't nearly enough. To build walls and towers of that cell, including material costs, transport, construction, and labor, would cost at least tens of billions of sil. Rona was uneasy about accepting that much money because she heard there wasn't much to spare. Aries told her to not worry about that because she was going to show her the full power of Aries the borrower. Rona begged her to use that money for the town's reconstruction. For her, enjoying sightseeing in this town was more important than the money. Aries once again called her an angel and hugged her. For now, she said that they would use that money for reconstruction, but if Rona needs it, she could withdraw it through the guild at any time. Suddenly, Rona got the message that said they cleared the Wednesday quest. While she was looking at her rewards, Aries stood there puzzled. She noticed that she had a new skill called fast travel. It allows teleportation to towns and places she had been before and cannot be used indoors. After that, she went to bed and started thinking about her skills. The things she didn't understand were fast travel and the aegis of the water mirror shield. The description stated that it had an incredible performance, comparable to premium items, and it was strong in both ranged and melee combat. She once again wondered if it was really okay to hand something that could change the world over to her. For now, she decided to try out the water mirror shield. A shield appeared in front of her and it moved according to her hand. She wondered what principle made it float. It stands out a bit and might be in the way of daily life, so she decided to only bring it out during battles. Besides, even outside of battles, the Ragnarube alone was sufficient for defense. Suddenly, the shield came under her feet and she started flying around on the shield. Apparently, when she jumped while riding the floating shield, she could do a double jump. She also found it odd that her defense and spirit increased by 808. She decided not to dwell on it too much and check her stats for the first time in a while. Her defense had finally reached 4 digits and she gained lots of new skills. Deciding to test out the skills, she started with the reflection. Since this was a barrier that reflects magic, she used her small heal to test it and it was successfully reflected by the barrier. It was indeed an amazing skill. If the enemy was a mage, she could completely shut them down. Enhancing her defense wasn't too noticeable either, which she was happy about. If her offensive power gets any stronger, it would be dangerous. She then noticed that her Aegis of the Water Mirror Shield could double the effectiveness of the magic. Rona decided not to see that and move on. The design seemed to interest her and she wondered if she could teleport by touching the place name. That was really an incredible power, so she wanted to try it out immediately. She touched the button that said the town of iPhone and immediately transferred there. But she used the power indoors so it didn't look like a success. The town of iPhone was under the attack of golems. The adventurers tried to evacuate the people and defend themselves, but the monsters were too strong. One of them was about to get killed, but thanks to Reinhard's quick and easy save, he was fine. They were all shocked by Reinhard's comeback when they found out he had just retired recently. Their focus immediately changed when more golems appeared. There were too many of them, and no matter how much an adventurer Reinhard was, there was no way he could defeat that many. So as they thought. Reinhard knew he was still not at his peak, but he believed in himself and used his lightning spear technique, killing 3 golems at once. He called out to Elmina, informing her that the front of the boss was open and it was time to cast magic. Elmina wasn't pleased by her order, but still decided to save them. She used her Inferno magic, the Annihilation Flame, and took down the boss in one cast. Hearing the adventurer's reactions, she felt even more elite, as if that were possible. She believed in her eliteness so much that she thought the town would be safe as long as she was there. She waited for more compliments and praises, but when her flames disappeared, an enormous boss named the Lava Demon appeared, making fun of Elmina's mere flames. Reinhard was sure they were supposed to be wiped out by now. It's said that demons were a form of ancient race consumed by power, who waged war against the gods, and if such a race were to resurrect, the world would end. The thought of that terrified Reinhard. Lava Demon thought he might enjoy playing with the humans who dominated the elves, but they were nothing more than insects to him. But no matter. He had already realized that the spell to break the seal was not in his town, so the humans were no longer needed. With one snap of the finger, more golems started to appear. This proved that unless they defeated the demon, they would have to keep suffering forever. After this series of battles, Reinhard was already out of stamina, and the adventurers felt desperate. Reinhard told them to evacuate the townspeople while he bought some time. The people and the kids were also counting on Elmina, but she seemed annoyed and wanted to go home. She stepped up and wanted to ask something to the demon. The demon seemed interested, so he decided to listen. Elmina, with the lowest voice, asked him to spare her life and said she didn't care about what happened to this town. Meanwhile, people who didn't hear what she said were cheering for Elmina, thinking that she would win against this demon without a doubt. While they were cheering for her, all she wanted was for them to shut up, because his hate would be directed toward her now. The demon responded that he had heard about someone named Elmina Manifire. They told him that she was a proud human who betrayed the Gugrekas family and didn't drown in immediate desires. Elmina once again didn't forget to mention she had a principle of not doing anything that wasn't elite, but she was shocked when the demon said he was considering giving her some power and keeping her alive. He said that they hold those who earned the title of witch in high regard, and if she had A-rank skills, she could have quickly become an executive among the demon race. She seemed interested and wanted to hear more about it, but the demon laughed at her face and said this town would perish along with her. She tried to talk a little more, but the demon had enough of her and said he would show her true despair. But Elmina was still asking more about the treatment and other things. A huge amount of mana surrounded her and she couldn't see anything. One thing she saw was a little girl cheering for her, and she decided to use the last bit of MP she had left and tried to offset it a little. But her flame was lukewarm for the lava demon. She couldn't believe her life was going to end in a place like this. And on top of that, she thought she was seeing the most unpleasant hallucination at the end. But it wasn't a hallucination, and Rona was there, successfully teleporting herself in the town of Iphone. While Elmina and Reinhard looked at her puzzled, she was so happy to see them and greeted them. Elmina was furious. The demon thought she brought out a summoned beast at this point and decided to blow them both away. He used the Great Flame Unmatched Wave, but even though it had a cool name, it had zero effect on Rona and it actually harmed him more. He didn't stop there and continued to attack, but Rona didn't even turn around and look at him while he was being beaten up by his own power. When the demon had no power left in him, Rona realized that she had forgotten to deactivate the reflection skill. The adventurers didn't notice Rona's teleportation and thought Elmina did something. Rona had completely forgotten about her shield skill reflection. Elmina was still in shock to see Rona taking down that demon in one hit without even looking at it. She once again saw Rona Hermit's power. The demon was furious, but the direction of his anger wasn't at Rona, it was at Elmina. He said that he would command her for wounding him this badly and acknowledged her strength. He even said he cannot defeat her. He decided to retreat for now after telling them that there were many more demons besides him, and they would continue to move to kill the hero Elmina Manaflame. Elmina tried to explain that she had nothing to do with that, but he didn't listen and disappeared. In the end, it looked like Elmina defeated the demon and she was the hero of everyone. She tried to clarify the situation because she didn't want to be targeted by demons. Even Rona thought Elmina defeated that strong-looking monster, and she admired how humble and merciful she was. She then noticed Reinhard and showed him the souvenir she brought from Aqua's port town. Reinhard asked when she returned because he thought she was supposed to be traveling. Rona responded that she forgot to buy souvenirs, so she came back. She teleported without thinking much, but she noted in her mind that she should space it out more in the future. Since she was already there, she decided to restock on iPhone's specialties too. She started running to the city because she wanted to share them with Ares and the others. Reinhard assumed that she sensed this town's crisis and rushed to the rescue. He did guess that it was probably Rona who defeated that demon earlier, and leaving without boasting of her achievement was just like Rona. Rona then teleported to the elven village and greeted Erna and the queen. The queen was surprised to see her, as it had been only 2 weeks since she left. Rona responded that she had learned how to teleport to places she had visited before. They froze for a moment, but the queen was relieved that she was doing the impossible as always. Rona asked how the village was doing, and they responded that everyone was really happy thanks to her. Rona had already forgotten the phrases she taught them, so she just wondered what they were talking about. She then showed the souvenirs she brought. She wanted them to try the scallop, as it would make them fly. It had been centuries since they had seafood, but they really liked the taste. Everyone tasted the scallop and they all liked it. After that, they raised their cups for Rona. While drinking, Zarich came and wanted to ask something to the queen. When she saw Rona, she was flabbergasted and started freaking out. Rona had no idea why she was so scared of her. They explained the reason, and apparently Zarich was currently researching a method for infinite herb gathering. She had always been a talented researcher, so instead of forcing her into labor as punishment, they thought it would be better to use her knowledge and skills, especially since they needed to establish a system for mass-producing Maboro leaves so that it doesn't happen again. That's what they call the right person for the right job. Erna hasn't forgiven her still for the horrible things she did to her mother and everyone, but Rona wasn't sure if it was safe. Zarich's plant manipulation skill was potentially dangerous. Zarich responded that there was no need to worry. She said that she was now no more than a rose with its thorns removed. A criminal contract spell had been placed on her, so she couldn't rebel, and without a mana supply from the Gugrekas family, she couldn't do much either. Besides, researching the Rona-style farming method she introduced was much more enjoyable to her. She said that she would be busy with that for at least 100 years, so she had no time for world domination. She got shy and asked her to teach her more things that might be useful. When Rona showed her the herbs and alchemy recipes she had, Zarich was amazed. She then commented that instead of obsessing over the slang of the gods, the queen should focus on more practical knowledge like this. When Rona mentioned that there were herb wounds here that didn't grow, and asked if she would like her to tell her about them, Zarich started screaming from happiness. She ran out of souvenirs for Zarich, but even this little was more of a reward for her. The feel of these herbs was divine. After that, the queen gave Rona something. It was an ancient artifact called a communication crystal that the Gugrekas used for their evil deeds. If she pours mana into it, it can communicate with a paired crystal. There were elves outside the village, so if she needed anything or if anything happened, she could reach out to them for help. That was a handy item, so Rona wasn't sure if it was okay for her to have it. The queen didn't have any use for it, so she could feel free to give it to anyone else she needed to. After putting the crystal in her inventory, it was time for her to head back to Aquasport town. Erna gathered the elves and told the queen they wanted to send her out properly. As they spell those words, Rona forgets she is indoors again and uses her teleportation skills. In the next scene, Ares finishes her lesson and reminds her students to make sure to review today's lesson. She had never felt so refreshed before, and this was all thanks to Rona, so she wanted to thank her properly. She couldn't help but wonder who she was while looking at the picture they took together. At first she thought she was just an ordinary girl, but she accomplished so many extraordinary things that would go down in history. Despite lacking common sense, she was oddly knowledgeable. She said she could hear the words of the gods through a skill, so Ares wondered if she could be an angel raised in the heavens. Just as she was thinking about that, Rona arrived from heaven with her wings. She greeted her and explained that she was in the middle of a fishing tournament, so she had to go. Ares was shocked and amazed that she had stopped thinking. Suddenly, Rona appeared again and greeted her again. Ares asked what she was doing because she just mentioned something about a fishing tournament. Rona explained that it was called the Shadow Reset Marathon. By checking the time, place, and fish shadow, she could figure out what she would catch without actually fishing. But if she teleported, the fish shadows reset, so by running the marathon and teleporting repeatedly, Until she got the fish shadow she wanted, she could catch rare fish. Unsurprisingly, Aries understands nothing from her words. But now she was curious. She ended up chasing after her and saw her catching big fish. This time it was the legendary fish Miyunagi. According to the speaker, Rona pushed away the second place by more than 10 times, and her first place was history with the highest score ever, shattering all previous records. She was witnessing Rona doing something incredible again. The people cheered for Rona. She thought about being more like Rona, more true to herself and living more freely. Lately she had been working non-stop and killing her desires for the sake of this town. To protect the town she loved, she took on the role of guildmaster, a position the previous one ran from. She had worked late every night, juggling that and her duties as a priest. But things were different now. She was free from the heavy responsibility of the Wednesday quests, and she had so much more time. She thought about starting to live for herself more. That's why she took out her camera and started picturing Rona, whom she admired a lot. But she seemed like a total creep, so they tied her up and dragged her out of there. Rona had fun with the fishing tournament. She joined hoping to win the top prize, but she caught so many rare, delicious fish too. And now it was time for the much-anticipated reward check. As the internet said, the top prize was the amazing fishing rod, a year's supply of special bait, and the best part for her was the 2 summoning tickets. Summoning tickets was a gacha-like mechanic. She could summon creatures randomly and their rarity ranged. She didn't need anything too powerful, and she would be happy with a cute mascot-type creature. Without waiting any further, she raised the ticket to the sky and cast the words. A magic circle appeared in the sky, and then a magic stone came out. A voice asked Rona if she was the one who summoned her, and it turned into a cute girl. She said that she was Lulu Luriel, princess of the water dragons and the future ruler of the seas. Also, she told her that she was going to make Rona her servant. Rona didn't expect her to be a person and a princess of the water dragons, but Rona didn't care about Lulu and she used the second ticket. Ironically, the second ticket was also Lulu Luriel, and she introduced herself too. The Lulus were shocked to see each other. They started to fight, claiming that they were the real Lulu and the other one was the fake. Rona was confused. The situation was getting complicated. She knew about the term duplicating, but she was still puzzled as to why there were 2 of the same person. When she looked up, the internet said that the summoning system was manipulated by the gods' enemies, making duplicates of the same individual more likely to appear. It could even force gods and angels to be summoned. Recently, the system's hands seemed to be bringing only the most beautiful men and women from somewhere in the world. While she was reading the information, one of them ordered Rona to do something about the fake Lulu. She looked it up again, and it said that she could either have the stronger one absorb the other, or sell them for money to reduce the number. They were shocked and called her a monster, but she clarified that she wasn't thinking about that. They suddenly realized that they were in a different place. They were in the castle, and then suddenly they were enveloped in the light. They started to get scared. For now, there was no humane way to turn them into one, so she decided to start by getting those Lulus back home. They were living in the underwater kingdom of Atlantis. Rona realized that this was an international incident. She started to think about what she did and freak out. If this continues, it could even start a war between species. For now, she thought it would be best to build trust with these Lulus. At this point, there was only one thing she could do. She took them to the Aqua's fish market. They were shocked and amazed that they could eat anything in there. One day, Aries told her that entertaining was about making the other person feel comfortable and building trust, and she could even dive into the sea and attach live fish to the hooks of important people when she reached her level. She couldn't do it as well as Aries, but bonding over food wasn't a bad strategy either. She also suggested human food, which they refused at first, but then they tasted it and loved it. But of course, the tension between the Lulus was a bit too much, so a fight could occur at any time. Rona's wallet was starting to hurt, but at least they were calmed down now. While eating lots of food, Lulus found fishing bait. They were amazed by the bait as it was made to catch fish. It was the perfect delicacy for a princess of the water dragon clan. Aries came with a sign on her neck saying that she secretly photographed a girl. When she saw Lulus, she once again activated her creepy mode and tried to hug them. They hid behind Rona and said humans were dangerous. As Aries started to speak like a total freak again, Rona told her to put away her inner old man. She tried to convince Lulus that they weren't their enemies. Aries calmed down a bit and asked what those girls were. Rona wasn't sure what to say, so she stopped a little bit. Aries asked if she was in some kind of trouble. She didn't mean to pry, but she told her that when she was in a difficult situation, she didn't have to handle everything on her own. It was true that she was strong enough to do almost anything, but that didn't mean she had to solve everything alone. If she ever finds herself in trouble and doesn't know what to do, she shouldn't hesitate to rely on them. After all, she had done so much for them. Rona decided to trust her and confessed that she accidentally summoned a princess from the underwater kingdom of Atlantis, and she may have accidentally duplicated her, told her to eat herself, or sell her for money, and even fed her fishing bait. She said that this could lead to an international crisis and possibly a war between species, and asked what she should do. Ares told her to calm down first and stated that in times like this, she must panic. Her solution to that was to have some drinks and forget the whole thing. She started to drink and apologized because she thought she could help her this time. This was turning into a real hassle for her, so Rona decided to try to resolve this peacefully. She finally comforted herself, but when she turned her back, the Lulus were gone. Worried, Rona wondered where they could be because she had to avoid an international incident. She saw them standing before someone, asking what they were looking at. They thought they were trying to steal Lulu's strength and give them 3 seconds. But it turned out that their enemies, whom they aimed to drench their blood, were just a bunch of cats. They also ended up being defeated badly by those cats. Rona thought about what she should do, and then used her fishing rod since they were fish. Her plan worked, and she successfully saved them from the cats, and earned their trust because they hugged her. Even though servants, which meant Rona, were good people, they still found the human familiars terrifyingly violent. The surface was a scary place for them. Rona realized that those girls felt so weak since coming to the surface. Rona had a bad feeling about this and decided to look it up. She learned that summoned characters start at level 1, so their level reset to 1 because they were summoned. In other words, she added another criminal activity to her list. She calmed down and asked if they should return to the underwater kingdom of Atlan soon. They seemed okay with that, as they had eaten enough fishing bait and learned much about the surface. They asked if she knew the way to Atlan, but Rona wasn't worried. Ares came and said it was her turn now. Rona asked if she knew something about it, and she said that after hearing Rona's story earlier, she checked the temple's library, and apparently this town had many legends about water dragons, especially their temple since it had been here for ages. The underwater kingdom Atlan was like a sacred place, so she was able to find some clues. On a stone tablet left by the ancient priestess Marilyn, it said that when the stars aligned on a full moon night, the melody and song of the water dragon would open the way to Atlan. The melody of the water dragon refers to the lyre enshrined in the water dragon temple's underground altar. Although the melody was lost, they might learn about the song of the water dragon from the ancient golem lighthouse keeper in the great lighthouse of the Water Moon dungeon to the west of town. Ares was dedicated to uncovering the location of the underwater kingdom. It felt awkward to tell her now that she found a map to Atlan on the internet, but she did tell her later anyway. They first found a rock engraved with the moon's symbol. It looked like they could get there from here. Lulus asked if she was sure they could get their home from here and if she wasn't tricking them. They didn't see any path here, so Ares thought they might need a special item as a medium to get to the underwater kingdom of Atlan. Even if there was a way, she couldn't imagine they could just walk underwater as they were. Rona told her not to worry about that because if the internet says it's fine, it's fine. Since it was dangerous, she told them to stay back. Confused, they asked what she was doing. She threw a bomb at the rocks and caused a huge explosion. When she opened her eyes, she was underwater. It didn't hurt, but it was scary. She confirmed that she could breathe normally and talk like usual, and she also didn't feel wet. She wondered if that was because she was walking on the glowing path. But when she looked up, she realized that she was really underwater. The explanation for this odd feature was that there was a glitch where if you are blown backward by something like an explosion, the surface collision detection disappears, and it lets you walk underwater. Rona was pleased by the result and then noticed that there wasn't even resistance from the water at all. Lulus came and asked if she was okay. She explained to them that she could breathe just fine, which caused them to get suspicious about what she was. After dropping them off in their homeland, Rona left there to let Ares know they were safe. Ares was glad that Rona was okay, but still, she had never thought blowing themselves up would open a path. She wondered if the explosion and screams were the melody of the water dragon and the sound of the water. It was hard to admit they took a shortcut, so Rona didn't say anything. While they were talking, a woman from the Adventurers Guild came and scolded Ares for not working. Ares didn't want to go because it was her first day off in a year. When she said she wanted to go to the underwater kingdom, she responded that the underwater kingdom was just a fairy tale. Ares said she wasn't lying, but that wasn't enough to convince her coworker, so she had to go. Back to the underwater, Lulus was so happy to be back underwater. They seemed to remember the way to the kingdom and were excited to show Rona around. Rona noticed monsters and told them to be careful. Lulus was shocked and wondered what those things were. Rona responded that all these monsters were level 40 and above. Rona used her reflection, the queen's dignity, and finally small thunder power to defeat a horde of Ichazors. Using a queen rose crown for the first time was pretty handy. Lulus got excited and held each other as they could see the castle now. The underwater kingdom of Atlan looked like a world straight out of a fairy tale. When they entered the kingdom, the people who saw Rona started to panic because she was a human. They even tried to evacuate the civilians and get ready for the fight. Rona had gotten used to situations like these, so she stayed calm. The town was beautiful and she really wanted to sightsee, but it didn't look like that was possible. But Lulu objected to the people and said Rona was a good human. The people couldn't decide if they should be surprised that there were two princesses or if they were protecting a human. When they asked which one was the real princess, they both said they were the real Lulu. This ended up creating another fight between the girls. The people immediately figured out that Rona kidnapped the princess, cloned her, and then unleashed that lightning that burned the sea earlier. They asked Lulu's if she tried to do anything for them, and they responded that she tried to sell them, which wasn't helpful. In the end, Rona was locked in the dungeon for kidnapping, cloning, and attempted human trafficking. She had magical sealing cuffs in her hand, but they didn't take any of her belongings. She felt so lax and wondered if that was okay. There was even a treasure in the cell. She looked it up on the internet and found an escape route, but decided to pretend she didn't see this dungeon. Lulu's came and tried to convince them that Rona was a good person and requested that they release her. The woman there stopped them and explained that Rona had deceived the princess and that humans were the creatures that once brought disaster to their kingdom. She asked them the reason they would ever want to bring a human in here and told them to return it to where it came from. From what Rona had heard, there were a lot of misunderstandings about humans in the underwater kingdom. The woman said even without humans, their kingdom was already suffering from food and resource shortages, and they couldn't spare extra food for two princesses, let alone a human. After hearing that, Rona had an idea and showed them tons of fishing baits, asking if they would like to eat them. They were shocked and puzzled. She explained that she had plenty of food, and they could eat it with everyone. They thought this was a trap and didn't want to eat the bait. But this dedication lasted for a few minutes because they couldn't stop themselves from those delicious baits. While eating, they were also expressing how delicious and irresistible those things were. They couldn't stop themselves from eating, even though they were sad. Rona reminded them to ask for a second when they finished. It turned out that fishing bait worked the best for gaining the trust of water dragons. But she was still wondering if it was okay for them to be eating it with such ferocity. They wanted to eat this bait forever, and even when Rona said she had other fish dishes, they wanted to eat fishing bait. Seeing them so eager, Rona remembered that she had the recipe for the bait and said they could make it with alchemy if they had the basic ingredients. They asked if it was alright to give them something so precious, but she wanted them to consider it a token of friendship. She said that she wanted to be friends with the water dragon tribe. Seeing Rona treat them so graciously, even after what they did to her, was enough proof that she was a good human, and they decided to release her. Rona was really happy and introduced herself to everyone. Meanwhile, at the castle, King Inorios of the Sea received the report about the human who supposedly kidnapped the princess. Based on the report, they were considering a trial under his authority. The worker asked Inorios if he knew Rona Hermit, but he responded that he didn't. Regardless, since her daughter was safe, he could finally rest easily. He requested him to bring her at once, including the human too. The man tried to explain something, but Inorios wanted to see them immediately. While waiting, Inorios couldn't help but laugh. When her daughter disappeared, he was worried his plan might fail, but he would have never thought that the famous Rona Hermit would get herself captured so easily. He had heard rumors that she had tamed the 6 demon priests, so she expected she would be more of a monster. But she wasn't a big deal for him now. Rona was an unpredictable irregular who had been stirring things up lately. One thing was clear, and that was the fact that she had been crushing the forces of darkness. And he assumed that she probably sniffed out of his plot and came to this underwater kingdom. Suddenly, the king transformed into a witch. Apparently, all this time she was disguised as the king, and she was so happy. With those magic sealing cuffs on, being locked in this dungeon was a pretty bad situation for her. For someone like Marilyn, the Water Moon Witch disguised as the king, she was just a fish on a cutting board waiting to be sliced open. Now she decided to see what kind of face she was making. She expected her to be frustrated and crying tears of blood. She asked the water to show her Rona Hermit's current state. Rona was talking with the chef named Herring Weston. She asked if he was worried that his pet octopus was missing. She told him that his wife had hidden the octopus in a jar in the kitchen. His wife explained that he ignored her and the dozen on that octopus so much that he forgot their wedding anniversary. Herring explained that the octopus wasn't a pet, and he was raising it for a special dish to celebrate their anniversary. She seemed so guilty for doing that, but Herring forgave her and hugged her. The other dragons were amazed by Rona, saying that she not only solved their food storage but also their problems. They gave her 10 pearls as a thank you. Marilyn watched this moment and she was confused. She wondered if she managed to win over the water dragons even with magic sealing cuffs and only her wits. That sounded impossible because she was cuffed with magic seals and was supposed to be locked in jail. She recalled her childhood when she was being scolded for getting involved with humans. There was no way water dragons and humans could ever understand each other as she thought. She decided to break that seal and unleash revenge on the water dragons and humans. While she was watching Rona, she was sure there was no way she could figure out that the Sea King had been replaced by an imposter. But when one of the dragons mentioned that the Sea King had become so much harsher lately, she simply responded that it was because the Sea King was actually an imposter. Someone called Marilyn, the Witch of the Moonlit Waters, was pretending to be him. Marilyn didn't expect her to figure out and expose her that easily. She thought this had been Rona's plan from the beginning. She was sure Rona allowed herself to be captured in the dungeon as the most efficient way to infiltrate the castle. Once inside, she swayed the water dragon soldiers and officials to her side, using her deductive reasoning to make them believe her words were the truth. Even though the water dragons distrust humans, now doubts start to spread among them. But her transformation hasn't been undone yet. As long as she was still in the form of the Sea King, no one would dare lay a hand on her. But this ended when Rona said if someone says the keyword Gashoka Mashoka, it will easily undo her transformation. Marilyn wondered if she realized she was watching her and remotely dispelled her transformation. There was no point in transforming again now, because it would just get dispelled and waste her MP. In that case, she decided to command the monsters to launch an all-out attack on this kingdom. But she seemed unable to command the monster. She figured that a fierce lightning strike from earlier had been to stop the monsters. Her entire plan had been completely destroyed without her even realizing it. She was terrified by how far ahead Rona planned for this. A dragon came and informed Rona that it was time for her trial. Marilyn started to panic because Rona was coming this way. She had to escape but already knew that no matter where she ran, it was impossible to escape Rona Hermit. The door opened and the dragon informed him that he had brought Rona Hermit. But when they looked at the king's throne, they were shocked to see Marilyn. Lulus and the others asked where the Sea King was, but Marilyn didn't respond. She commented on how impressive Rona was. She stated that she was amazed by her brilliant mind. There was no need for an introduction because she took the place of Sea King Honorios to exact her revenge on the Water Dragon tribe, and humans who betrayed her and cast her aside. She had been trying to break the seal on the Water Crystal Eve, which lies hidden beneath the sea, but she was sure Rona had already figured that out a long time ago. She acknowledged her strength, but for her, that didn't mean she had lost it. She was dedicated to destroying humans, water dragons, and everyone. The dragons listening to her questioned why she was suddenly confessing everything. Everyone, including Lulus, was confused as to what was happening. They weren't exactly quick to believe the Sea King was an imposter. Rona was confused because she didn't know what Marilyn looked like, so she had no idea who that person was. She looked it up and then learned that she was her, but she wondered why she undid her transformation. Marilyn was sure they could never escape her illusory prison, and used her water magic skill to create 2 clones of herself. She said no matter how clever Rona was, she was sure she couldn't figure out where the real her was. Rona was confused as to what was going on. She was also puzzled because Marilyn kept laughing like Carrara. She said that she sold her soul to the Demon King to seek revenge on this world, and had far surpassed human limitations. Her confidence was high because she was sure that no matter how powerful Rona was, she was still only human. And now, with magic sealing handcuffs on, she thought she had no chance against her. Marilyn used her ultimate water magic, but Rona simply decided to use reflection, and Marilyn ended up drowning in her own skill. 20 seconds later, she was defeated. The dragons removed Rona's handcuffs and the others started to spread while Rona was still puzzled about what happened. Since Rona could only use magic, she could easily win by reflecting her magic and depleting her MP. Even under a magic seal, she could still use personal skills or equipped abilities. After defeating the witch Marilyn, who also held the key to the prison, Rona made her way to the dungeon where someone had been locked up. Rona opened the suspicious-looking chest, and inside, a man emerged, looking very happy. From Lulu's reaction, it was revealed that he was the real Sea King, Inarios Lulir. The first thing he said was to question why she had 2 daughters. Rona explained to him and added that after summoning Lulu and accidentally doubling her because of the artifact going haywire, they defeated and captured the witch Marilyn, who had been impersonating him in the kingdom of Atlan. He concluded that a lot had happened while he was sealed away. But he understood what had happened and decided to accept that she had 2 daughters. Rona asked if that was really okay because she thought having 2 daughters was a huge deal. The king responded that an artifact malfunction was like a natural disaster. It's no one's fault, and they were lucky that the daughters made it through safely. Besides, he seemed pleased that he had 2 adorable daughters now. He tried to hug and kiss his daughters, but they pushed him as he smelled bad. Inarios thanked Rona for saving the kingdom and then turned to Marilyn, who was sitting in her cell. Inarios knew who she was and explained that the Water Dragon tribe and humans used to have interactions long ago. Marilyn seemed annoyed by his phrasing and corrected him that it was much darker than simple interaction. The Water Dragons took priestesses with royal blood from the humans and in exchange bestowed treasures upon them. Then they offered those priestesses as sacrifices to monsters. Lulu asked if that was true, and Inarios confirmed Marilyn. But still, in the end, when the water dragons and humans tried to come together, it failed, and war broke out because Marilyn, a lowly priestess meant to be sacrificed, dared to feel emotions she shouldn't have. Everyone was trying to kill her. After that, she was sealed away in an artifact called Soul's Casket, which froze time around her and was cast into the sea. When she awoke next, 1,000 years had passed. In that time, the sea had closed itself off from humans, the water dragon tribe became a legend, and the once powerful water dragon temple had crumbled. She was remembered only as the ancient wicked witch who had caused it all. But she confessed that none of that mattered to her anymore because, in the end, all of them were destined to perish together right here. After finishing her speech, the place started to shake. They thought it was an underwater volcano eruption, but the shaking felt different. Inorio seemed to guess what she did, and Marilyn confirmed him. She weakened the seal on the monster imprisoned in this underwater kingdom. She couldn't fully destroy the seal, but at this rate it wouldn't hold for long. That creature was a mythic beast that even the combined forces of the 7 goddesses could barely seal away. If that seal breaks, the world would be swallowed by the sea and even Marilyn wouldn't survive. That was her plan all along because she wanted to take revenge on both humans and water dragons. Lulu turned to Rona and asked if she could do something about this. Rona didn't even know what was going on, so she decided to look it up on the internet. She learned that it was a high-difficulty boss unlocked after clearing part 2 of the main story. She read that it was impossible to defeat this thing, so she tried to find any other way. One of the dragons informed the king that the seal on the shrine was starting to break. The sea was crying out in pain, and if this continues, it won't be long before the seal fully collapses. To maintain the seal, a sacrifice of royal blood was required. Both Lulus immediately volunteered to be sacrificed. Before Rona stops them, Inorio says this is a royal decree. They tried to object to him, but he patted their heads and told them that they were the future of this sea, and they were going to become a magnificent sea king. He only wished he could have seen them grow into a fine sea king. Everyone started sobbing after realizing that he was going to sacrifice himself, but Rona raised her hand and asked if she should take care of that for them. The king asked if she was really saying that she was going to defeat the primordial water crystal, and Rona confirmed him. But before they began, she wanted to have a moment. She started researching things and practicing. Lulu asked if she was sure about this because this creature was not something a mere human could defeat. No matter how strong she was, they didn't think it was possible to defeat it. But there was no need to warn her about this because she already knew that the enemy was something straight out of legend. A monstrous being so powerful that many gods have tried to challenge it but failed. If they get hit directly, even with her 2 S-rank armors, she would be lucky to survive a single blow. Still, Rona told them that she understood everything clearly. She believed in herself because she was not the same girl as before. She had learned so much from the internet, and this time was going to be different from when she fought the Doomsday Dragon. She had studied the boss's weaknesses and resistances, watched countless strategy videos, and practiced boss fights in her head. That's why she could stand there with confidence. Inarios informed her that once she entered this gate, she would be within the barrier, but once she was inside, there was no turning back. She wouldn't be able to leave the barrier until the primordial water was defeated, and they wouldn't be able to lift the barrier until then. Rona said it was okay and mentioned that it was easier for her that way. The king kneeled in front of her and wished her good luck. Rona panicked when he bowed, but the other water dragons didn't leave him alone, and they also bowed to her. Humans and water dragons were always taught to be incompatible. The water dragons had been told that humans were terrifying creatures and that if they entered their kingdom, disaster would follow. This calamity might be because they allowed a human to enter their domain, but while most of them were paralyzed by the murderous aura coming from beyond the gate, Rona was the only one stepping forward to fight. She had no obligation to them, but she was doing this for the water dragon tribe. But also, this matter was no longer about humans or water dragons. They finished their speech and wished her good luck. But Rona couldn't leave because Lulu grabbed her and tried to stop her because she didn't want to lose her. Both of them were crying because they just became friends and Rona was leaving for a suicide mission. Rona smiled and told them that she wasn't going anywhere. She promised to stay by their side always. After all, the best position was right there outside the boss's room. They were puzzled, but she didn't let them ask and used her stuff to create a small thunder. She attacked the gate and said it landed properly just like the internet said it would. She waited and then continued to attack repeatedly with her small thunder skill. Inarios was concerned that a powerful attack was coming, so he told everyone to run for it. He was going to warn her too, but she continued to attack the gate with small thunder. She even brought a chair to not get tired. After a lot of small thunder, they heard the phase change sound. Inarios heard that it could shift into multiple forms, and they didn't know exactly how many, but this one was likely. Its star form had self-healing abilities. Lulu worriedly asked how they could beat it. Rona said she was going to stay here for a while and used reflection. Then she doubled the power and created good thunder. This pattern of attacks continued for a while. Inarios didn't expect her to do that and wondered what was happening. And he wasn't alone. The others were puzzled as well. Rona was comfortable because she had got the pattern completely down just like the internet said. According to the internet, the core was surrounded by water, which transformed into 4 forms: dragon, sword, star, and human. Each form had different characteristics, so a versatile approach was required. However, there was no hitbox at the entrance to the boss room, allowing them to attack from outside. In the god's words, this method of fighting the boss without entering the room was called zone abuse. Now it was time for the final blow. After her final blow, she defeated the primordial water crystal Eve and gained lots of new skills and titles. As if it were nothing, Rona informed everyone that the battle was over and the world was saved now. Everyone was confused and shocked, so silence followed her statement. After the glory, Rona and the others went inside the gate and encountered a mysterious place. Rona explained that this was said to be a holy site of the gods, often featured in the religious work anime's opening. Lulu started wandering around and then noticed something. There was a chest. Rona recalled seeing something like that when she defeated the Doomsday Dragon Raznadrek too. She said that this was the reward for defeating a boss. She had only seen it once before, but it seemed that when you defeat a very strong enemy, the world rewards you in the form of a chest. Inarios touched Rona's shoulder and said this should be received by Rona. They made her hurry and opened the chest. Inside the chest were a pair of swimsuits. Everyone was confused and thought the world desired to see Rona in a swimsuit. Rona turned on the internet and figured that it was armor. She had so many questions, but when she saw that when using the swimsuit, the success rate and set count of attacks would be double, she was relieved. The Sea King also wanted to reward Rona, so they came to the treasure vault of the underwater castle. They wanted her to take everything, but Rona refused. They explained that they were all brought by their ancestors from the Golden Kingdom, but they had no use for them. She said that for her, rather than receiving treasures, she wanted to try a lot of Italian cuisine. This seemed a bit hard because they were currently experiencing a food shortage, and even the king had only been eating seaweed and kelp for a while. Rona then had an idea and suggested creating a win-win situation. On the surface, Ares was waiting for Rona, but she was worried. When she heard Rona's voice calling her name, she turned her back only to see 3 Rona. She asked why there were 3 of them, and Rona explained that this happened while she was testing her equipped skill. It wasn't unusual for Rona to be strange, so Ares wasn't really surprised. Rona said that she wanted to start exchanges between humans and the water dragon tribe, so she thought it would be nice to have her come as the representative of surface dwellers. Ares was okay with this plan, but when she said she wanted to bring Dwargo along too, she realized that she was talking about going to the underwater kingdom of Atlan. They took Dwargo and went to the fairy tale underwater kingdom of Atlan. Ares was amazed by everything. Dwargo was surprisingly worse than she was. He started observing everything around him. One of the water dragons brought his spear and said it was damaged, but Dwargo grabbed the spear and was shocked by the worth of it. He asked for the blacksmithing workshop and asked them to bring all the weapons so he could repair all of them. Dwargo seemed to be having fun, and Ares was trying to talk to the Sea King. Inarios questioned if she was alright in the head because she had some strange paper hanging around her neck. Rona assured them that she was a good person, but they didn't seem to be okay with that. But apparently, Inarios knew about the priestess clan of the Water Dragon Temple. He had never imagined he would sit at the same table as a priestess of the Water Dragon like this. Ares then asked Rona why she was brought here. Rona explained that the underwater kingdom of Atlan was experiencing a food shortage, and the port town of Aquas had a surplus of food thanks to the Wednesday. Furthermore, the port town of Aquas was currently lacking funds for its reconstruction, but the underwater kingdom of Atlan had a surplus of treasures that had no use. If they share what they have in excess, they could create a win-win situation. After making the deal, they had a huge feast to celebrate their bright future. While eating fresh fish, Lulu came and asked her to tell her about the surface. They wondered if there was a forest where trees grow endlessly. Rona said there was, and there were people called elves living there. Speaking of them, she asked if they should try creating a field in this holy site. Since elves like seafood, she thought they would be happy to help if they offered them sashimi. While they were talking, Marilyn found everything foolish. She admitted Rona's brains, so much so that it was frightening how far she planned and thought ahead. But there was no way humans and water dragons could get along. She said that it was going to be another war anyway and the ocean was going to close up soon. Inarios responded that that may have been the case in her time. She agreed and reminded him that because of her, a rift was created between humans and the water dragon tribe. She suddenly started yelling but then admitted that she was born as a sacrifice anyway, and whether he boiled or cooked her, it didn't matter to her. He responded that he wouldn't do any of that because his ancestors told him to make sure to treat her well, and make sure she came here someday. He wanted Rona to show her the answer, and Rona was happy to do it. She opened a video and there was a voice saying that she was about to sacrifice herself and she had no regrets. After that, a man named Shiryu appeared. He told her that she wouldn't wake up for another 1,000 years and wondered what the world would be like then. He said that he wanted her to live even if he could no longer be by her side. While he was telling things that a lover would say, Marilyn couldn't believe what she was hearing. She thought this was a trap while her lover Shiryu was talking. But when he said he loved her at the end, Marilyn couldn't stop crying. She wanted to see him, but this was just an illusion. She said that it was too late now, but Inarios responded that even so, he was glad he was able to tell her. The exchange between the underwater kingdom of Atlan and the surface world had finally begun, and Rona had just received a swimsuit drop, so they were all at the beach. While playing with Lulu, Ares arrived and apologized for keeping her wait. When Rona saw her, there was a mysterious light on her body. She asked what it was, but Ares didn't answer it. Dwargo arrived too, and he had a black seaweed-like thing on his chest. But when Rona asked, he said it was also a mystery. Rona noticed that there were so many mysteries in this world. Ares asked if Rona was aiming for the capital, and Rona responded that she couldn't board the ship to the royal capital when she arrived in this town, so she would go there. Ares told her not to worry because a ship to the royal capital would arrive in 3 days, and she could enjoy today to the fullest. Rona said she couldn't swim and didn't really know what to do. Ares explained that even for those who can't swim, there were plenty of fun things to do at the beach, such as beach volleyball. Rona knew about it but didn't know the rules, so she asked her to teach her. Ares decided to show her how it was done first and brought Dwargo along with her. When Ares started with her serve, the ball disappeared. When it reappeared, it was so fast and so powerful that Dwargo couldn't see it coming, and Ares explained that this was 1 point for her. She said that when you knock your opponent back with your volleyball skills, you score a point. She asked if she understood the basics of beach volleyball now, and Rona responded that she was still a bit confused. She recalled that the sport of tennis, which the gods play, was somewhat similar. She wondered if it was normal in the sports world to suddenly shoot beams at their opponent. Dwargo appeared and asked if she really thought she would win. He was standing while holding the ball and reminded her that his receive phase was not over yet. Ares was pretty sure her wave serve hit him directly, so she was confused. Dwargo explained that he simply stopped the time. He generated a minuscule black hole by manipulating the ball's rotation, distorting the space-time. That was his volleyball skill called time, which only God knows. Ares started grinning and said this was going to be a lot of fun, but she told him that her wave serve has up to 108 variations. Dwargo didn't seem scared and said only people from Aquas could harness ki for volleyball. After that, they started playing. Rona and the girls seemed puzzled and uninterested, so Rona asked Lulu to teach her how to swim. 3 days later, it was time for Rona to go, so Ares was crying. Rona hugged her and promised to come back. Dwargo said that he would forge a sword for her that surpasses even the greatest sword using Atlan's techniques. Lulu's came and asked if she was really leaving with their teary eyes. Rona said she was, but she told them that she would probably be back soon because she could teleport anywhere she wanted. Lulu wanted her to summon her whenever she needed. She wanted to become a magnificent sea king, so she needed to learn more about the surface world. After that, they thanked her and used her name for the first time. Rona was shocked, and when she got over the shock, she asked if she just said her name. Both denied that and pushed her to the boat as they got embarrassed. Rona turned and looked at everyone one last time. Leaving like this felt a bit lonely, but she confirmed that this town was so much fun. She said goodbye to everyone and another journey for Rona began. In the next scene, the legendary Great Sea Beast, the Shin Serpent, appeared and the people on the ship were sure that it was done for. When a man noticed Rona standing, he wanted to warn her that it was dangerous. But Rona started flying with her wings and started fighting with the serpent. She used reflection to defend herself and then used small thunder one time to defeat the Great Sea Beast. Everyone was shocked as usual. Rona once again defeated a giant monster with the help of the internet. When they reached the shore, people comment that they had never thought she was the Archangel Rona who caused the miracle of Aquas. Rona had no idea she had a nickname like that. They explained that she was famous around here. After all, she suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the port town of Aquas, delivered many rare monster materials, took down an area boss in one hit, and built wall defenses and automatic monster extermination devices in just 1 day to save the town. Rona couldn't act humble after he listed all those things. They thought the rumors were a bit far-fetched, but after seeing that magic she just used, they believed everything. They asked if she could use even more amazing spellings and perform miracles outside of Aquas too. Someone appeared and told them not to get carried away with this. Rona felt relieved about being saved. The boy who saved her was Konoha, the traveling merchant. Rona seemed off at first, but then they shook hands. Konoha commented that the magic she just did was incredible and asked what on earth she was. Rona was puzzled because she was just an ordinary person traveling everywhere. He didn't believe this was true, but Rona was already distracted by the beauty of the royal capital Webenheim. When she turned to Konoha to express how amazing the city was, he disappeared. Rona wondered if he had something urgent. Meanwhile, a bunch of knights asked the people on the ship if they knew a girl named Rona Hermit. Since they knew Rona and her power, they responded negatively. The fact that one of the kingdom's strongest forces, a royal knight, was here meant there must be some troublesome situation behind it. So until they understood their purpose, they decided not to answer the questions carelessly. They asked if the knights had any details about her, and he responded that he only knew through hearsay that she carries a distinctive staff and was said to use extraordinarily powerful magic. She was said to possess a divine aura and wisdom akin to a sage. She also often stares blankly into space like a cat, frequently using unfamiliar words like grass. After hearing that information, they were sure the knights were talking about Rona. They wondered why she was being searched by a royal knight. They were sure she was a dangerous child in various senses, so they thought the country must be trying to utilize her as a final weapon. When they all concluded that she was a final weapon, they turned to the knights and convinced them that they hadn't seen such a girl. The knight thanked them for their cooperation and left there. They had no intention of letting her be made into a final weapon and were dedicated to protecting her beautiful smile. The knights asked for an update, but they were all unable to find her in the ships. While they were going crazy over finding Rona, Konoha was reporting that he had successfully made contact with the target. He said that her power was off the charts and defeating the Shin Serpent in one blow was unexpected. The person who was hearing these stated that her power poses a danger to their country, and they can't leave her unchecked. To eliminate her, they must thoroughly investigate all information. Konoha wanted to do that mission, but even if he were to defeat her, it wouldn't matter. Since he was the kingdom's spy, that might be possible for him. But the person reminded him that if he mess up, he must commit suicide immediately. After telling him to leave the results behind, the person turned off. Konoha took out the spy tool, which was a small statue's appraisal stone. Rona was more vulnerable than he expected. She certainly uses powerful magic, but if that were the case, anything could happen because this world belongs to those who control data. No matter how superior the opponent was, it didn't matter. As long as he obtains the data, he can devise strategies endlessly. When he eagerly opened Rona's data, he was shocked and overwhelmed by the number of titles, skills, and equipment she had. He first scrubbed his eyes and then shook the data device to make sure he was seeing it right. He realized that he had seen something he shouldn't have. He started questioning why each of the ability values easily surpassed humanity's limit of 999. This could only be perceived as something akin to a demon lord or a dark god. He didn't even want to think about what would happen if Rona found out he looked at her stats, but he also cannot afford to be timid because he has no choice but to become recognized by that person. And for that, he decided to do whatever it takes. In the next scene, the knight who was looking for Rona was freaking out because they just couldn't find her anywhere. One of them heard she could use the ability to fly, so he wondered if she came without needing a boat. She could also use her teleportation skills so they can't understand anything. Recently, there had been strange natural disasters in the forest and sightings of a girl accompanied by a suspicious group in black robes. There had been a lot of unsettling rumors lately. The anxiety among the people was slowly growing, and more than ever, when the nation was in turmoil, they needed a hero to give people hope. That's why they must find the great prophet to address the imminent crisis of the royal capital. Meanwhile, Rona was lost in the city. She looked it up on the internet but then noticed that the local specialties were castella and chocolate. She tried to focus because this place was too complicated and she had no idea where she was. Wandering around, she tried to decide what to do as a lost person. She thought about going to the Lost Child Center, but she couldn't find a place like that. Deciding to ask someone, she approached a woman and asked for 1 gold bar of castella and a place for lost children. The woman told her that if she was lost, she should try heading to the central square and they should have some signposts. Rona thanked the woman and then started eating the castella. Seeing her reaction, the woman got so happy and gave her another one in the house. She said that as long as she kept eating like that, she would be more than happy. Rona ate both of the castellas and the woman offered her more. The way she ate was so appetizing that the people wanted to eat too. The castella woman informed everyone that she gave the little girl too many freebies and that she was almost running out of ingredients and was almost sold out for the day. This caught everyone's attention and they wanted to take one too. Rona was stunned and then realized this was a tactic. After that, she went to the square the woman was talking about and thought she could figure out the way from there. She then noticed the beautiful statue. She had always relied on the internet, so she decided to try praying for once, but she was sure there was a proper way to pray. It was 2 bows, 3 claps, and 1 bow. If she messes up the ritual, a manners guru god might descend out of nowhere and whack her with a manner stick. She noticed that if she used the keyword during the second part of the main story, it would trigger the famous event cutscene. When she accidentally cast the keywords, a light burned her eyes, and she found herself in the middle of nothing. A woman called her chosen one and said she had done well to come this far. She said that she fought against the evil god Terra, so she was prepared to save this world too. Rona thought she was the VTuber, but the woman introduced herself as the goddess of light Lafiel. Lafiel noticed that Rona looked disappointed and explained that she didn't know what a VTuber was. Rona responded that the reason why she reacted that way was because she had always been watching the gods, so it wasn't surprising. Lafiel then asked if she randomly said the words of power, but even from Rona's face it was clear that she had no idea. Lafiel didn't know what to do because she accidentally unsealed the Golden Land. Rona suddenly thanked her because she had always been such a hold on the internet. She then gave her the mayonnaise she made and bought a bunch of other stuff from food stalls. Lafiel said that she was talking about the world being in danger, but when she tried the food, she was amazed. That was her first time eating food from the human world, but everything was so delicious to her. Rona asked if she should start making offers now and then because she had always been such a big help on the internet. Lafiel seemed embarrassed because she didn't remember anything like that. She said that if she didn't understand the situation, then she would need to explain it to her properly. After all, she was definitely qualified to be here. She told her that this world was facing an imminent crisis of destruction. Rona was calm. She explained calmly that there had been a few world-ending crises lately, so she had gotten used to it. Lafiel scolded her because that wasn't the right response. When Rona told her what happened in the underwater kingdom, she was shocked. Realizing how powerful Rona was, Lafiel asked who she was. Rona responded that she was just a normal ordinary person, but that didn't seem to satisfy her. Rona then asked what the new crisis was. Lafiel was about to explain everything, but she had been talking too long and now she was running out of time. She tried to stop and extend the time, but the only thing she could say before disappearing was to request something sweet the next time. When Rona opened her eyes, she was in front of the statue again. She had obtained the title of Apostle of the Goddess of Light. The knights came after seeing the goddess statue glowing. They said that they were looking for a girl who constantly stares into space, says strange things, seems to foresee the future, and causes world-shattering trouble wherever she goes. Rona simply responded that she hadn't seen anyone like that. They thanked them for her cooperation and left there. She realized that she had forgotten to ask for the person's name and decided to head to the place she was aiming for. This time she used her wings. And that place was the casino. That is the end of the recap at chapter 33. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.